As people continue to grab their seats, first and foremost, I'm City Manager Michael Flad for the City of Southgate, and I really want to be the first of what will be many thank yous for taking time out of your Saturday to come and be here with us today. Just some logistics and housekeeping type items that I want to take care of for you. Translation service is available, so if you are in need of translation, the back of the room with the hand up, we are providing translation services, so please take advantage of that. Refreshments are also in the back, on the back right-hand corner. Restrooms, for those of you, and I think most of you are familiar with this facility, are just outside the doors you came in and to my left. We have a great deal of printed information for you as you came in. There's a lot of flyers from the various organizations that have been partnering and working on this issue in this community and in this region. And so please, if you didn't take advantage of that on the way in, please make sure you grab the printed material. Most of the material is available on our website, which is also printed out and available for you. That information is constantly changing, being updated on really a daily basis by the city. So we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that we're a conduit to get that information out to you. I'm going to thank a lot of people. I want to thank the folks that have come out on their Saturday to set up tables to provide information. Specifically, Speaker Anthony Rendon's office is here. Supervisor Hilda Solis's office, everybody's waving, so wave. Hilda Solis's office is here. Lena Gonzalez has staff that is here and information available. LA Unified School District is here. Thank you for being here. Altamed is here. We're going to hear a lot from Altamed. Thank you for being here. LA Fire has resources that are here. We're also going to hear from folks from LA Fire. And Animal Control is here. I want to thank them for coming out. I know a lot of folks have concerns about the impact of this event on their pets. And while they may not have all the answers, they will know folks that should be able to get us the answers that we're looking for. We agendize this as a formal meeting, and that comes with some restrictions and logistics. So it won't impact you with the exception of about the next 2 minutes here. So if it's acceptable to the mayor, I'll have the city clerk come up, do roll call, open the meeting, and begin the formal process of our gathering. Carmen Avalos, city clerk. Thanks, Carmen. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So thank you, everyone. So we'll start off with the roll call. If I can have Mayor Bernal. Let the record reflect that she is present. Vice Mayor Diaz? Thank you. Let the record reflect she is present. Councilmember Rios? Record will reflect that Rios is present. Councilmember Davila? Record will reflect that Ms. Davila is present. Councilmember DeWitt? And record will reflect that Councilmember DeWitt is here as well. City Manager Flad? Here. Present as well. City Attorney Salinas? Thank you. And pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, disclosure of compensation for the meeting attended tonight or today by our city council members is set at a rate of $650 per month, regardless of the amount of meetings. Want us to go and say?
Oh, no, you keep going through the whole. Yeah, thanks.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with the open session agenda, which is item number 1, community discussion regarding the Delta Airlines emergency fuel. City Council will allow regulatory experts to address the community concerns on the potential health impacts from the Delta Airline emergency fuel release that took place on January 14th, 2020, and provide an opportunity for the public to comment and voice their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen Avalos. I know we just did a roll call, but let me introduce the council members from the city of Southgate that are here. You're going to hear from the mayor, but the mayor of the city of Southgate, Belinda Bernal, is here. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. Vice Mayor of the city of Southgate is here. Thank you for being here. And then we have the entire council is here. All 3 council members are here. Bill DeWitt, Maria Davila, and Al Rios are also here. City Clerk, who I mentioned, Carmen Avalos is here, and our City Attorney, Raul Salinas, is also here. Thank you, Raul, for being here. In terms of staff, we also have the Chief of Police is here. Thank you, Randy Davis, for being here. Also, look for folks in blue shirts. We've got a number of staff folks that are here. If you have any questions, especially regarding just logistics, if you're looking, as folks continue to come in, we do have translation services that are available. The folks in the blue shirt can get you there and in the back of the room. we can provide those services to you. And then any other questions you have regarding just logistics of the facility, look for somebody in a shirt that looks just like mine, and we're happy to help you. As we all know, Southgate was not the only community that was affected by this incident. And at this time, I'd like to, by show of hand, are there any other elected officials from our neighboring communities that are here? The Mayor of Cudahy is here. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you want to join us up in the front. Thank you. And Cudahy has been a tremendous partner in this effort. I know the mayor is going to touch on this also, but been very inclusive. They had their town hall meeting, which quickly became a regional town hall meeting, and at the direction of our mayor and council, that was the intent of this meeting also. I will mention that we're recording this meeting, so we want to make sure that folks that do have questions come up to the microphone and address those questions so that we can get that recorded, so that folks that aren't able to be here today or want to take advantage of the Q&A that we're going to have as part of this process can do so at a later date, and we'll be streaming both the video and the audio from this meeting. So would appreciate it when you have a question and we get to the Q&A portion that you come up and avail yourself of the microphones. Today we're going to hear from experts. These are professionals who understand the issues, the complex science, and the other elements of the fuel release. We appreciate you taking the time to be here on this Saturday with us. Your attendance was on very short notice that you agreed to do that, so we really appreciate you clearing your schedules and taking the time to be here. We know you've been out a lot on this issue. You've been at other town halls, and you've been doing a lot of your own press releases and your own efforts, so we really appreciate your time this weekend with us. I'd like to introduce the experts that are going to be participating with us today. After I've had a chance to do that, then the mayor will be the first person that we'll have come up and speak. The intent of the format is to have each expert make a presentation. Then we'll have time for question and answer, as I said, from this podium. And then the intent then is to break up and have an opportunity for one-on-one discussions with the experts that are here and then with the resource tables that you have available to you. So that's the intended flow, and we'll see how it goes, as the mayor says. We'll do the best we can to be responsive to your needs and react and stay dynamic as the needs of this meeting changes. So who do we have with us today? So, and again, thank these folks, if you would, with me. Derrick Alatorre is the Assistant Deputy Executive Officer from South Coast AQMD. Thank you, Derrick, for being here. Dr. Muntu Davis is here. He's a LA County Health Officer from LA County Public Health. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for being here. Chief William Gamble from LA County Fire is here. Thank you, and you have your team here. Thank you. Fernando Flores, Assistant Chief of Hazardous Materials Division from LA County Fire is here. Thank you for being here also. Pat Shannon is here. He's the Environmental Health Manager for the Office of Environmental Health and Safety from the LA Unified School District. Thank you for being here. And last but definitely not least is Bernice Nunez Constant from, you're the Vice President, you know who you are. You're the Vice President of Government Relations for Ultimate. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everything Ultimate is doing. So who's not here? Regrettably and notably, Delta Airlines is not here. I cannot tell you this is not from a lack of us insisting, inviting, I don't want to say begging, but begging that they be here and at least put a face to the actions that took place. You know, personally, I'm so very, very frustrated with their approach, but I'll try to curb my personal feelings and say that they have provided a statement. We'll read that statement to you after the experts have had an opportunity to talk about their specific aspect of this incident. And I know the mayor's going to have comments about who's here and who's not here also. So with that, please join me in welcoming to the podium the mayor of the city of Southgate, Belinda Bernal. Thanks.
Right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's meeting. To all the speakers that will come after, thank you for your expertise, your willingness to be here. I wasn't going to start with these comments, but I will say that willingness is key. Willingness shows that you respect the community. Willingness shows that you are willing to obviously listen to folks who have questions, who have concerns. Those are very valid things. So thank you for being here. So I did jot a few notes just because I don't want to lose my train of thought. The Delta fuel dump that affected our community and neighboring cities was and continues to be unacceptable. Since January 14th, we meaning staff, elected officials, on various phone calls with Delta, the Federal Aviation Administration, our neighboring colleagues, Altamed, state and federal representatives and their staff members, in addition to other state officials. The full city council attended the town hall in Cudahy. And out of our commitment to our community and to continue to wait for the results of this investigation, we feel that it's a responsibility to have this type of meeting. It is a special city council meeting. At the same time, it's an opportunity to hear from you, to document it. I know folks say documenting doesn't do much sometimes, but it does. In these type of situations, it's crucial. We want the conversation to remain alive. We don't want folks to think it wasn't a big deal. I'm okay, I'm resilient, I can move forward. We're already used to that as a community, right? And I've heard that comment. Oh, I think folks are gonna take advantage of this to do other things that they shouldn't do. I disagree with that statement. Just this morning, I was on a phone call with a resident, the mother of a child who attends a local school, who says that all last week her daughter had a headache. The school administration called her to say she is not concentrating in the classroom. She needs to be under medical care. And the mother had to pick up her child. If the mother's here today, I did invite her personally to come. Hopefully she can state it in her own words. Even though I seem calm and collected, I really am frustrated when we hear the words beg. The health risks that we don't know of, the health risks that we know of, and the quality of life of our residents has been impacted. We know that the dump impacted cities in Southgate, Cudahy, Downey, I believe, Pico Rivera, and Whittier. There were some residents present at the town hall in Cudahy. That's why I'm stating these cities. Los Angeles, thank you. And as we await our full investigation from the FAA, we unite our voices to come together to represent you, to benefit all of our community members. Thank you to our staff. You have worked diligently to arrange the various speakers here today that will help answer questions. Again, I must express that I am extremely disappointed with Delta's choice to not be present tonight. There was another community meeting that took place just yesterday, and they had a representative there. So what are they concerned of? Begging, it did kind of sound like begging. I don't know if others would agree, but when we talked to the representative, we said, we really hope you change your mind about coming to Southgate and come. Because we are reasonable people. We are people who want answers. At the same time, we want information. We deserve information. And to have them not present today is really disrespectful. And it's disgusting. I'll use that word. So again, let me just state, even though we know they are going through their own investigation and their own legal counsel is advising them, they could have been here to listen. They could have been here to take note. However, I'm very happy to know that our meeting is recorded, and this will serve as a public record as well. So thank you, everyone. Again, don't undermine my collectiveness. I am really frustrated. We have similar backgrounds, humble people working in our community who are tired. Many of them are not here today probably because they're resting or they're working their second or third job. So I hope that the folks that did make it here today, you share with your neighbors, you share about the resources, you share about everything that the city is doing along with our neighboring cities of Cudahy. It's really been these two cities that have been very active. But I have no doubt that other electeds are also looking to provide information. So let's take advantage of the resources. If you ask me what's the next step, we don't know that yet because we're working with Delta. We're waiting for the FAA to respond. But I would definitely say that our goal is to continue to have, information available for you, that if you call City Hall, we will have someone there to at least refer you or jot down your information so that Delta can be responsive. We really hope that, it's not we really hope, it's we know that Delta needs to be held accountable, and they know that. And with them not being present today, they send a very strong message that I personally am not forgiving of. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're going to bring our experts up. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for those words. And the first expert we have coming up is Derrick Alatorre from South Coast AQMD. Derrick.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Derrick Alatorre. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Legislative Public Affairs and Media at the South Coast AQMD. So last week, when this incident happened, we started receiving phone calls from the public, specifically from the Park Avenue Elementary School. We got calls from folks in Pico Rivera at the schools and other schools in LAUSD, a little west of here. Upon our getting those complaints, we did have staff go out and see if there was any issues that were of concern to us. So at that time, we determined that there was a public nuisance. So we issued what we call a notice of violation, NOV for short. So it's kind of like when you get pulled over by the police, you get a ticket. It's a ticket that we issued to Delta Airlines. So what this does is it opens up a legal issue with us that Delta has to address, and we go through the process of issuing them letters, and they come in and try to justify or give us extenuating circumstances. If we don't find that relevant, then we move on to a fine. So that's where we're at right now. We're going through that process with our legal department. There was a question to us that was issued today. Was there any threshold that was violated? So from our standpoint, we don't have any, we have very limited authority when it comes to mobile sources and mobile sources such as a plane. So it really didn't, it didn't violate a threshold for us, but being the fact that it is a nuisance, we did issue the NOV. So that's what, there was obviously a presence of fuel around the schools, and obviously the children were impacted. So we did issue that notice of violation. Once we traveled to the different areas, we did notice that, at least from our standpoint, the odors had subsided substantially, and so that's pretty much, we issued that one notice of violation for essentially their entire trail of fuel that they dumped, because we know it impacted many people. I am open to any questions that you may have. I will stick around afterwards also, but so how does this work? You want the people to come up and ask the questions, or Mike, how do you want to handle that? Okay, thank you.
We're going to have all the speakers present, and then that way, if people have questions that go across multiple speakers, you won't have to come back and forth. So next speakers that we have coming up are from LA County Fire, and that's Chief Gamble. And I don't know if Flores, you're going to come up at the same time, or you're going to, however you want to do it.
So LA County Fire, we've brought a whole team within our department. We have Health Hazmat, and I'm going to bring the chief from Health Hazmat up, and I'm also going to bring our public information officer up, Captain Tony and Brenda. So I'm going to invite them to come up and address what the response from LA County Fire was.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Tony Imbrenda, LA County Fire Department PIO. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to come up here today and talk a little bit about what LA County Fire Department's activities were on the incident last week. You know, it was unfortunate that it happened right around 12 in the afternoon, just after noon. We had all the children, you know, our most vulnerable population out there on the playgrounds at a lot of our local schools. So it stands to reason that a lot of the exposure issues and initial complaints that came in were based on the fact that they were out there and right in the path of this aircraft that released the fuel. Before I get into LA County Fire's activities and how we set up and did our initial assessment, I'm going to invite Chief Flores up just to talk a little bit about what health hazmat is, and it's a technical end of our response that can provide a lot of technical expertise, and he'll have a lot of information as to lingering health effects and cleanup and that sort of thing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure being here. Like Tony mentioned, I'm the Assistant Chief over the Health Hazardous Materials Division. We provide the technical support for our incident commanders at any incident. So we are the techie guys. We're the ones with the little multi-rays out there with all our equipment to try to determine and try to find the unknown chemicals, to try to determine, you know, what the chemicals are and what hazards pose at that immediate time. One of the main things that we focus on is just the immediate hazards. What's happening right now? Is there any explosive hazards right now? So that's what we engage on. And obviously, since the kids were affected, that's where the main priority for us was, what are the health hazards occurring right now at this instance? We responded to the Park Avenue Elementary School in Cudahy first. We sent one team there, and we started doing the assessments of all the areas in the playground areas, between the classrooms, inside the classrooms, the cafeteria areas, outside, and everything. We did the same day when it happened, the 14th. We did an additional 5 schools, 2 here in the city of Southgate, some in Cudahy and Los Angeles. So that's exactly what we did. I'll answer some of the more technical questions from the public when you guys ask those questions to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I just wanted to emphasize that the Health Hazardous Materials Division, they bring a technical expertise to this type of incident in the form of very sensitive monitoring equipment, so that they were consistently moving through the operational area right as the incident started and throughout the days afterwards to detect if there was the presence of this chemical on the ground or on the individuals that were in the operational area or on any of the property that was in the immediate area. So on that, let me move into exactly how this shook out in the opening hours. Right around just after 12:13 specifically, LA County Fire Department received a dispatch for a hazmat/MCI incident. So what that means is a massive casualty incident involving the release of some sort of a hazardous substance. So of course the initial details are always going to be sketchy when one of these things happens. So it requires our first alarm to arrive at the scene and incident commanders to make an immediate assessment as to what is going on, what the threat level is, so that we can properly equip our personnel with safety equipment, and if there are a need for additional resources, to immediately get those rolling to the area. So based on the widespread nature of this incident and such a large area that was affected, the first alarm assignment, which would bring approximately about 20 apparatus and about 40 personnel, was immediately upgraded to a second alarm assignment. So that brought over 80 personnel, just firefighters, and about 40 apparatus. And that's not even including all the health hazmat folks and folks from the assisting agencies like the ambulance company, Care Ambulance, the Sheriff's Department, our partners in public health, mental health folks, AQMD, Los Angeles, LA Unified School District environmental health specialists. So we had a pretty robust response of experts that came out. So the initial action was to determine that, you know, we obviously had a release of jet fuel in the area. It was smelled very strongly. So our hazardous material squads that are equipped with instrumentation to read this chemical in the air immediately started to conduct air monitoring in the area to determine whether or not our firefighters needed to don breathing apparatus or protective equipment that was going to protect them from that chemical. And fortunately, it had dissipated enough at that point to where all our instrumentation was reading a non-detect. So there was no measurable quantity of this chemical in the air as we started this operation. And I wanted to commend LAUSD too, because they immediately took the children inside and got them out of the area where the fuel had been spilled and got them indoors. And that's really the key, is to remove the potential victims from the chemical as fast as possible, which they did. Then the next step was for firefighters to set up a process of triage, and that's where we're going to identify patients and find out who's injured, who's not, who's got medical complaints, and then classify those patients into categories, whether they be necessitate immediate transport to a hospital, whether they may be in a delayed status where we don't have to move them right away, or patients that fall into the category of not needing transport to the hospital. So during that process of triage, we saw approximately, well, it was actually 44 patients total in LA County Fire's operational area in 4 different schools. The 2 schools in the Southgate area, Tweedy Elementary, 6 patients were seen there, and at San Gabriel Elementary in Southgate, another 6 patients, so a total of 12 in Southgate, 44 total for our incident. And as each patient was brought through and medically evaluated by paramedics for skin irritation, eye irritation, or respiratory distress, each patient was determined to be in a minor state of medical distress and did not require immediate transport to the hospital. We were fortunate enough also to have our medical director, Dr. Clayton Kazan, on scene, and he was able to personally evaluate the majority of the patients and get a very clear picture of exactly what was happening from a medical standpoint, and felt that gross decon was not going to be required, meaning we didn't need to set up with fire apparatus and start flushing patients down with water, which does happen in a hazardous materials type incident. Fortunately, due to the readings that we were getting off the patients and in the air, the lack of the presence of this chemical, this jet fuel on the patients, it allowed for us to not have to move into gross decon procedures, and we were able to release these patients to go home and basically take a shower, wash their clothes, and remove any chance of any further exposure to this aviation fuel. That monitoring that I speak of continued on throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours and into the coming days from our folks from the Health Hazardous Materials Division. They have very sensitive instrumentation, and they can detect the presence of a constituent like aviation fuel. If there's any at all, they can measure it. And throughout the entire incident, from the inception to today, all the readings have come back non-detect. So we're very fortunate that the dispersal of the aviation fuel, the vast majority of the VOCs evaporated before this stuff hit the ground. So we were very fortunate for things to work out in that way. But our health hazmat folks and our folks from public health are going to be available to you now in the coming days to continue to evaluate and answer questions that you may have. That concludes my remarks, and if we have any questions directed at the fire department, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give all the first responders a round of applause, please. Both our service delivery partners in County Fire and our police department were on scene as fast as humanly possible and providing service to everyone, both in the Southgate community and the Cudahy community. Just truly heroic efforts, always on your part. So thank you. We're so proud to have you as our partners in service delivery. So thank you for that. Switching now to public health. Dr. Davis is here, please. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Muntu Davis. I am the County Health Officer with the Department of Public Health. And much like our fire colleagues have described, we understand those same details. And actually for our public health department, we actually do send staff out as well. There are 2 types of staff that we send out whenever we get an incident like this. One is our emergency personnel, who really understand how to organize and get things together when we have a response that requires us to be involved. In addition, we have environmental health specialists who will go out as well and confer with fire, hazmat, health hazmat, and others who are there responding to the scene to get the details, to give more information, and also to confirm the recommendations on what to do with the results of that incident. In that moment that an incident happens and right afterwards, we have to understand both what it was and the extent of what was, or the concentration of whatever that fuel was. Understanding that jet fuel, the basis of jet fuel is kerosene, all the steps that were taken were appropriate for kerosene. Noting that if it is on the body, what you do is take off your clothes, and what you do is wash with soap and water in order to get it off, and you can wash your clothes as well. The things that we did not understand, and we still don't have information on, is the extent. How wide of spread was this in terms of the dispersal of this fuel? What we also don't know is what additives were in that fuel, other chemicals that may also pose a potential health risk to the public as well as the environment. So the challenge for us as public health is to, one, understand what's happening, confirm that information, and rapidly get information out in order to protect the health and well-being of the public. And so based on what we understood, we reiterated that same advice for folks who may not have been at the school, but we understand that there are folks in the neighborhood who are also impacted by this. The jet fuel didn't fall just on schools, but what information do we give for you all? And that was, if you have these odors, move away from them or take your clothes off, shower, wash those clothes. But not knowing how long and the concentration of the dispersal of the fuel in the environment, giving additional advice, if you still feel symptoms, to contact your healthcare provider for an evaluation. And again, that's the unknown, but giving advice in terms of we don't know exactly how long this is going to last because we don't know the concentration, we don't know the extent, but if you are still feeling symptoms, do go and seek medical care immediately. The other thing that we started to quickly think about was what happens in terms of the soil. What about folks who have fruit trees? What about places that have gardens? And in that, we said, look, this is what we understand with kerosene. We don't know if you can wash it off. If you've got lettuce, it's probably hard to wash off. If you've got an orange, if you peel it, is it going to be good? We don't even want to go through that. So just discard all of those fruits and vegetables that you have not brought in the house that were exposed and throw that stuff away. Still understanding that, what happens, is it going to be a permanent thing in the environment? We still don't know for sure, but the thought is with the chemical properties of kerosene that it should evaporate, which is why after this incident, although folks were impacted, then when they went out and checked air levels, it wasn't reading. So it started to evaporate in the air and was dissipating. So that, in theory, should be the same thing that happens in the environment. But still, we don't know the concentration and what areas were hit, so we still have to get that information. But even based on that, the best recommendation that we could give is once you throw away those fruits and vegetables, the next harvest, which should take months, by that time, the stuff should be good. But I still think that we have to confirm that information. We have to know what additives were in that jet fuel, and we have to know the extent of the area that was impacted and how concentrated that may have been in the environment. And that information, should be more readily available. I understand that the FAA is doing an investigation. Their investigation will include both what happened in the incident, what were the details of that, but the most immediate information they can give is when and where did that dump start? Where did it end? What were the wind patterns? They can do some modeling to understand how that fuel might have dispersed, which would be helpful for us to figure out the exact geographic area that might have been impacted. And that information we're still waiting for. We still don't have information about the additives. And once we have that, we can update our guidance and information in terms of both the health of the environment as well as the health of all of you as well who were impacted by this. But I can say that when I first heard this, I had to ask the question. I said, you've got to be kidding. You're telling me jet fuel was released and people are being impacted by this. Out of the years that I've been alive, the years that I've been in public health, I have never, ever heard of this. And so I was pretty shocked and appalled that this actually did happen. And I'm still confused. And I would like to know the details of what that was and how those decisions were made and if there were mistakes made. But my most immediate concern is to make sure that you get accurate information from us on what you need to do to protect yourselves as well as your environment and your neighbors. So I thank you, and we'll be here to answer questions.
Pat Shannon is going to come up again, just a reminder, he's the Environmental Health Manager from LA Unified School District. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, distinguished guests, and concerned citizens of our communities. My name is Pat Shannon. I'm the Environmental Health Manager for the Office of Environmental Health and Safety. And I want to start off, like I always do, is that The health and safety of our students and staff is our #1 priority. And I would like to thank, on behalf of LA Unified, the extraordinary work that was done by the city agencies, LA County Fire, LA Fire, Department of Health, in order to do the immediate triage to make sure that the health of our students and staff was ensured. Where my job comes in is to mobilize the resources in order to follow up after the triage to make sure that the schools were ready to be open the following Wednesday. I established contact with the Federal Aviation Administration. I also made contact with Delta Airlines out of Atlanta. And out of Atlanta is where their Environmental Compliance Department office is located. They also have an office over at LAX. We established contact with that team, and they mobilized their local team to meet our team of environmental health specialists and safety officers to go out to the schools that were impacted. And working with the county, working with the fire department in order to come up with a plan in order to make sure that those schools were ready to be open. So our crews work around the clock, 24 hours. We met with Delta, got a plan. They mobilized 12 working crews along with our maintenance and operation folks. I think that totaled about 70 individuals that we went out and washed down the affected schools. We had 26 affected schools. We had 3 schools that actually had the fuel mist that was reported. The other 23 that reported odors, we also went out there and evaluated that and also did a washdown. So using those 12 crews that were provided by Delta Airlines, we cleaned the entire outside surfaces of the school. They did the washdown of the vertical surfaces along with cleaning any kind of drinking water fountains that you could have that direct exposure for students. We also were monitoring too to make sure that we were not getting any detectable levels of the volatile chemicals that are in the mixture of the kerosene. Here in the city of Southgate, there were 12 schools that were impacted, 11 that had the odors, and then Willow Elementary School that had the mist. But with the tireless effort of our teams and working with the various agencies, we were able to open the schools on time the next morning. And once again, I thank on behalf of the LA Unified the work that was conducted. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't typically think of teachers as first responders, but they were actually there first, and they did a fantastic job of getting students out of harm's way with no notice.
That's exactly right. I attended the staff meeting at 93rd Elementary School, and those the individuals that I'm sure that were at all schools really took great action in protecting our students and getting them out of harm's way. And I can't say enough on our teachers and what a great job that they did. Thank you.
Our next speaker, we have 2 more speakers. Our next speaker is Bernice Nunez-Constant. She's Vice President of Government Relations from Ultimed. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the services that you're providing to our community.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Y buenas tardes. My name is Berenice Nunez-Constant. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations with Ultimed Health Services. We got involved in responding to this incident this past weekend where Vice Mayor Denise Diaz reached out to us. I want to extend a humble thank you for thinking of us as a partner. As you all know, we have been serving these communities for many, many years. We're your local community clinic. And so when we caught wind of this incident, we wanted to figure out a way that we could help and make healthcare services available and free at no cost to those that believe that they were impacted. When we were engaged, we had not heard of the provision of healthcare services to you all and to these communities that were impacted at no cost. And we know a lot of the folks in the area, we know these communities very well, and we know a lot of folks don't have access to a regular provider or have a medical home. And so we immediately engaged on the issue and made sure that we began to work on how and what we were going to provide in terms of services. So on Tuesday and Wednesday, we began conversations with not only the city council members and the mayor and vice mayor and others, not only here with the city of Southgate, but also with the leaders in the city of Cudahy. And we mobilized immediately internally at Ultimate as well to ensure that we could figure out what we were going to provide, when we were going to provide it as quickly as possible. And so Wednesday evening is when we were able to solidify that, yes, we would be providing free, no-cost healthcare services to those impacted beginning right the following day. I believe the email I sent out was close to midnight on Wednesday night to city leadership. We began providing healthcare services at 8 o'clock in the morning on Thursday from 8 o'clock to 8 p.m. At that time, we had only had approval and bandwidth to offer services up until tonight at 8 o'clock. However, I'm happy to share with you all, just given the need and given the fact that we had to mobilize quite quickly to get the word out. We were a bit concerned that folks leading up to tonight, that folks were not aware that the services were available. I'd also like to say thank you to the city of Southgate for mobilizing and getting folks on the ground and handing out and hand delivering about 15,000 flyers to local community and the surrounding schools in the impacted area. And that happened yesterday. And so I'm again happy to report that these services are available free, no cost tonight up until 8 p.m. Also Monday and Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We do have folks from Ultimate here, and we have the flyer of the services and where to go to get those services, which is our Southgate Clinic at 8627 Atlantic Avenue. No appointment is necessary. You all can just walk in. There's also a phone number you can call if you have any questions directly to Ultimate. Our teams are now well aware. It took a little bit just informing everybody that these services were available, at least internally. Everybody's now well aware that they are available. And so the services that we're providing are healthcare services and behavioral health services. These services they're no cost. We've gotten questions around, do I have to sign a waiver? Is there some sort of release that I have to provide before receiving these healthcare services? Absolutely not. You all will receive healthcare like we would any other patient coming through the door. And the services that you'll be provided, we don't have a standard protocol that we're following. It's just as if you all would go into the doctor and share the services, and whatever services are provided are going to be specialized to the patient and whatever your needs are. And so we encourage you, please come to our Ultimate Clinic on Atlantic here in the city of Southgate. Services will continue to be available tonight until 8 o'clock. And then Monday and Tuesday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 p.m. in the evening at no cost to you. And of course, we will be here as well accepting any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Okay, our last speaker, we're going to have the city attorney for the city of Southgate come up, Raul Salinas. He is going to read a statement again. If you weren't here earlier, Delta Airlines has refused to show up after multiple invitations. They did provide a written statement, and Raul Salinas is going to read that for us.
All right, thank you. All right. This is the official statement from Delta. It reads as follows. Statement. on response to Delta Flight 89. For Delta, safety always comes first. This includes the safety of customers on board our aircraft, our employees, and those in the communities we serve. Since the emergency landing of Flight 89 on January 14th, we have been focused on supporting the community, listening to residents, and working closely with local leaders to understand how we can best support those who have been affected. Immediately after learning the reports of the jet fuel release, Delta sent a team to evaluate these sites. We dispatched 13 cleaning crews to work with Los Angeles Unified School District crews at schools in the area to clean all outside surface areas that students could encounter. As a result, all of these schools reopened the following morning. Delta continues to offer a dedicated phone line for residents with concerns about property damage or health effects. The number is 800-441-5955, and there are English and Spanish language representatives available to take calls. Delta representatives attended 2 town halls and continue to be in close communication with community leaders. This week, we worked with Ultimed to set up health screenings for residents concerned about exposure to jet fuel. We worked with Ultimed because we know that they are a trusted healthcare system in this community, and they have made available a designated area to bypass normal wait times to receive care. The screening started at Ultimed's Southgate facility on Thursday morning and will be available through Tuesday, January 28th, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at that location. We have worked with Ultimed, LAUSD, and community leaders to help spread the word about the screenings. While an open FAA investigation limits what we can say regarding some of the operational specifics of Flight 89, we are committed to continuing to provide information as it is available and confirmed. We deeply regret any impact this may have had on you and your families. We mean it when we say we are an airline led by our values in good times and in challenging times, and we will continue to work with community leaders to assist those affected by Flight 89. That's the end of the statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Again, that was a statement from Delta Airlines. Raul Salinas is not an employee of Delta, has no affiliation with Delta Airlines. He was just reading that on their behalf. I can go on and on and on about how disgusted, frustrated, and angry I am that Delta Airlines does not have the common decency to come and look us in the face and just even to read that statement. So I'm going to leave it there in an effort truly to stay professional. But okay. At this point, we're gonna now switch to question and answer. So any folks that have a question of the panel, if you can just come, we can form a line behind the podium. I'm going to ask the members of the panel, well, why don't we stay seated at first, and then as questions are brought forward. As we transition and as folks are lining up, I'd like to invite the mayor of the city of Southgate, Belin Bernal, to come up again, and if you just want to offer any, as we transition out of this portion of the program, if you want to offer any additional statements, or we can transition straight into the Q&A.
So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know folks want questions to be answered, and I know my colleagues as well may want to state a comment. I'm going to defer to our audience first. We can have closing statements from all of our council members as well. Thank you to all the presenters once again.
And if we ask questions, if you know specifically which one of our presenters that you think knows the answer to that question, as we stated, there are a lot of specific questions that we're not going to have the answers to. We are recording this. This will be then put on our website, and we will be streaming it out. So any question you have that we don't have the answer to, we will be taking down that question. This council has been fighting since day one to get you the answers from the FAA and from Delta Airlines. It will continue to do so, and we'll continue to post that information on our website. So if we don't have the specific person here or the specific answer you're looking for, again, FAA and Delta are not here, we will continue to fight to get those answers for you. With that, I think we'll stay seated, but I have a feeling we're all going to end up here very, very shortly. because I am not the subject matter experts that you all are. Councilmember DeWitt.
Thank you. When I saw the plane fly over, it appeared to me to be a little lower than most of the planes flying over. And it may be necessary for someone to work with the FAA, and it may require a subpoena to get the elevation flights, the actual flight pattern, and what elevation the plane was flying at, so that we have more accurate information. If Delta's not here to give us that information, I'd hate to have to go to court and get a subpoena to get that information on the elevation and their actual flight pattern, because that could relate to other problems that they've had. Thank you. I don't know who would be the best. Probably the regulatory agency would be the SMOG agency. The AQMD would have the authority to go in and try to get that information from the FAA.
And I've seen, and we're posting on our website too, that your congressional representatives from Barragan, who represents this area, to Maxine Waters, to, I'm not sure the other congressional folks that were on a letter that was just sent to the FAA outlining that specific question and a multitude of other questions. We'll be making sure on the city side, at the direction of council, that we are also tracking and then posting that information as it comes in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Ruiz. I've been living in Southgate since 2006. I grew up in Huntington Park. I've been practically an environmental activist for half my life, since 1998. I'm currently involved with the Southgate Community Environmental Health Action Team and with Communities for a Better Environment. I myself was exposed to the fuel dump. I didn't get rained on like others did, but the smell permeated my entire house for hours. And that same day I experienced nausea, dizziness, and I've actually had an upset stomach since then. I got myself checked out today at Altamed, and they were able to tell me that it was definitely related to that since it happened, and since I've had it since, since the fuel dump day. I have questions for everybody.
Okay.
This is, in terms of the reimbursements, if anybody else comes up and has had any experience with that, my concern is whether we need to have these reimbursements done all at once, whether they have to, are people being asked to sign non-disclosure agreements when they submit these? Are we limited to the time, to the money spent on medications, are we going to be, are we going to be reimbursed for our time? Is that taken into account? As far as with the city, at the last meeting in Cudahy, I mentioned that, we really need to have a better emergency notification system. The airplane traffic isn't the only environmental concern we have. We have many chemical, well, not many, we have a chemical factory north of Firestone near Alameda. We have a chemical factory here in Garfield. We have pipelines that traverse both sides of the city as well, petroleum pipelines. And if something happens, we need to be prepared. And this incident shows that we were not prepared to give a residence notification. When this happened, I didn't know that the smell that was permeating my home was all over the city. I thought it was related to the auto shop next door. I didn't put things together until I got the notification from the LA Times that that had happened and that the plane that I had seen earlier go by my house was dumping fuel on me. I didn't think that a plane would dump fuel on me. That didn't even cross my mind. And this was 2 hours later that I found out that, this is what had happened. And I understand that, emergencies happen, but we should have been notified right away. I could have known to, take cover, shelter in place, to close my windows. By the time I realized I needed to close my windows and doors, the smell was already in my house. I didn't even know how to get rid of it. We need better notification system, and I really hope this council takes that into account. Downey residents were notified right away. They were able to take appropriate action. As far as the other questions that I have, for the Alatorre from the AQMD, what kind of monitoring was done by the AQMD, and were any of the local monitors taken into account? I know that fortunately our area doesn't have any permanent monitoring systems. The closest one is in Compton, and the air patterns pretty much make that information null. I know that because of AB 617, we had a mobile monitoring station nearby. Is that still active, and is that information recorded? And will that be taken into account when, following the NFA, the notice of violation that was given to Delta? And if we don't have that information, I feel like this is the perfect example of why we need a permanent monitoring system here. And I know that as part of the CHAT, we've worked with the city to install AeroQuell systems, and you can see the high peak from 12 noon that day, and it just pretty much goes down. So I don't know how that information can be taken into account, or how much information we can get from that, but I think it really highlights how much more investment we need in our city, in our region. Sorry about, but I have like a
Yeah, if you could just let me answer one at a time there, because I'll get lost. Okay, so your first question was, did we take samples? Do we have monitors out here? So as I mentioned earlier, the first thing we did was we sent out our inspectors out to do the first investigation. They did notice the odors. Then the second phase was to get samplers out here. By the time we got out here with the samplers, as even the fire department said, the odors had dissipated so much that it was non-detect. So our monitors that we had out there were not going to pick up anything, because the actual most sensitive monitor out there is our nose. And if we can't smell it, the monitors typically are not going to be able to smell it. When it comes to odors, okay, there's other things, other factors that, there's other contaminants, but when it comes to an odor, our nose is most sensitive. Your other question was regarding AB 617 and the monitors. So Southgate was just selected as a year 2 AB 617 community, is part of a number of communities for year 2. But right now, we don't have any monitoring going out here. One of the things that
So the Huntington Park mobile lab was removed already? It wasn't operational?
Huntington Park just got selected for year 2 for AB
Well, my
617.
understanding from the AB 617 meeting was that there was a mobile lab that was placed in Huntington Park to monitor the air quality.
So if you're talking about the multiple air toxics exposure study, the MATE study, I believe the study is due to finish in 2022. So I'm not aware, and I could check into that to see if there was a monitor. Now, depending on, again, the dispersion, and those type of monitors look for certain things. They may not pick up the odors. And, that doesn't mean that the odor's not there. I just didn't pick up the odors. I would have to do, more research on that. So what were your other questions?
They were actually for other members of the meeting. But thank you. For the health department, I understand that, we don't really know what the additives are to the jet fuel, but my understanding, and from my professional experience, I'm an environmental scientist, so I actually conduct site assessments for industrial commercial properties, and I've done so for the past 10 years. And I know that a lot of this information is maintained by, by the county health department, by fire department. Whoever inspects these airports should have access to that information, and it should be public records. I know as a resident, sometimes I run into trouble because a lot of this is proprietary information, but I don't understand how it could be difficult for government officials to obtain the material safety data sheets with the known additives onto them.
So the difference is when it's local and a business has a hazardous material, and I think Fire Hazmat can talk about this as well, then they have to register that locally. But what we are talking about are planes. And where that fuel was put into the plane, what they did, or what fuel they put into it at that time may not be locally. So a plane flying over us, we may not have those specific details. And so that's the details that we have to understand and confirm.
So my understanding was that it had taken off from LAX, so is it not safe to assume that the fuel they probably filled the plane up with was from the tank farm at LAX?
It could be in terms of that, but again, that I don't, and Fire Hazmat, you guys would have to tell me if what's at the airport is registered with us as the county, or if that sits with FAA and.
Yes, so within the Health Hazmat Division, we have an investigations unit section where we investigate environmental crimes or potential possible crimes. We do have an active investigation going on, and we just obtained the material safety data sheet from Delta. So we have it, so we can share with you this. Our investigations unit just received it yesterday, Friday. So we will be able to provide it to the doctor, to public health.
So it's kind of alarming to me that it's taken this long to obtain that information, though. I mean, if those are something that should be filed with or even looked at during your guys' inspections.
No, okay, well, yeah, they, at LAX, there are different fueling stations, which uses different different types of fuels. So we weren't sure which ones did they grab from.
Is that information not available through SIRS?
It's not, no, it's not. Well, I'm sorry, we have, on SIRS, we are able to capture all the material safety data sheets, but we aren't sure of which ones Delta, this particular airplane, Flight 89 had. We just obtained the specifics from Delta themselves. So that's why it took longer, because they were going through the legal department. That's why it took several days, but we just obtained it yesterday.
That's still pretty alarming. I mean, considering you guys are the first responders and you guys have to, submit your own staff to a lot of these chemical emergencies, that's something that should pretty much be on hand.
For us, it is alarming as well. I mean, that's stuff that we rely on, that we would want to have immediately, but for whatever reason, again, as he said, we just got it yesterday. So that, unfortunately, and the fuels are different types, so knowing which one it is what we really have to specify.
So,
I think just great comments, and I think what you're touching on is how incidents like these point out areas, for example, an Amber Alert type system or a reverse 911 type system, and the value that would have had we had that in place, right? And so, and then knowing that Southgate and all the cities within this corridor are impacted regionally. So there's things flying overhead, there's stuff on the 710 freeway. How do we know what's in those trucks? And so these incidents are what point out those gaps, and we're able to then improve the system.
I think even just working interagency, I mean, not knowing what these chemicals are, how they've affected our environment. We had a rain event following the jet fuel dump. I mean, you have to think of the cumulative impact on our community. These things wash down the sewers. The schools were washed down. They're not just affecting us, they're affecting, the wildlife down the LA River. And I mean, was any, there's discharge testing requirements after a lot of these chemicals are dumped into the street. Were any of those protocols followed? I mean, there's laws that are supposed to, keep these in mind. I mean, has the Water Quality Control Board been involved at all to, verify whether any of the, the rivers around here were impacted by this? It's just a really bad lack of coordination, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I just want to reiterate, so great comments, and really appreciate you being here, and thank you for those comments. And the ones that we're able to give you specific answers to, and the ones that we're not able to give you specific answers to, because we are recording this, because we're going to stream this, we will take those questions and get those to the agencies that are responsible. Councilmember DeWitt asked a question about altitude and the release, and so we'll take those questions to the FAA and to Delta Airlines and get those answered and post those on the website. So if we, just again trying to say, if we don't have the answer for you tonight, I know it's frustrating, but we'll get you those, we'll make sure that the agencies responsible for those answers get those answers and we get them published. So, sorry, go ahead. Taking up your time, sorry.
No problem. Good afternoon. Oh, my name.
Try to speak right, I guess.
This one? Yeah. There we go. Okay. So good afternoon, my name is Osiel Padilla, I'm a Southgate resident. I actually live on the south side of the park, so I live very close. And I went to Tweedy School growing up when it was in the bungalows. So I was affected by this incident as well. And first I'd like to say thank you to the City Council, the Mayor, the city staff, and also all of the representatives that are here to give the community information and try to help us out. I know a lot of us were very concerned. A lot of us were worried. A lot of us were outraged, frankly. I was furious to find out that the people at Delta thought that it was okay to dump this fuel at such a low altitude over our community. And when I saw the route that the plane took and that they knew that there was a problem and that they wanted to land well before they were in our community, they could have dumped the fuel over the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, which would have, yes, it would have affected the wildlife in the ocean, but at least it would not have devastated our community or other communities. And the fact that it happened over elementary schools, children are especially sensitive to toxic substances because their bodies are developing, because they're smaller. I couldn't believe that they would actually do this. So I'm very upset as well that Delta's not here. They're not here to hear these complaints. They're not here to face the community that they affected. And yes, I understand it was an emergency situation. They had to make sure that the airplane landed safely. They had to get rid of some of the weight, so they dumped some of the fuel. But they could have done it in a way that did not affect our community so negatively. They could have dumped the fuel over a much less populated area. Cudahy is one of the most densely populated areas in the United States. They could have dumped this over the hills, over the mountains, in the ocean, where it wouldn't have affected so many people. So I'm very upset that Delta's not here and that they're not taking responsibility in our community here in Southgate. That's number one. And then some more specific questions that I had. About the question, Representative DeWitt, I think you were asking about the altitude of the plane, and this release from the FAA says that the fuel was dumped while the airplane was at 8,000 feet in altitude is when they started dumping, and they kept dumping until it was 2,500 feet above ground, which is highly unusual. Normally, they dump the fuel at 8,000 feet above ground or higher so that it can atomize and it doesn't land on the communities. But when they started dumping it, it was between 8,000 and 2,500 feet. So that is, I believe, why the AQMD issued its NOV, correct? And public nuisance. And I did have a question for you regarding the NOV, the violation. Have there been...
Real quick, and I just want everybody to know, this is Q&A, right? But I really appreciate you making that opening statement. This is being recorded and it is going to go to Delta, so please feel free to make comments with how you were directly impacted by this. I know we're saying Q&A, but I appreciate you making that statement before.
Sure. As for the question about the NOV, so the violation, have there been similar violations where airplanes have dumped fuel at such low altitudes, 2,500 feet, and what has been the outcome? Did the penalties deter that airline from doing that again? Because I think that's my main concern now. It's making sure that we treat everybody in our community, that our children don't get any illnesses. I was looking up some of the illnesses that can potentially come from being exposed to jet fuel, and it's not as inoffensive as Delta would like us to believe. They said there was minor skin irritation, maybe eye irritation and headaches. But when I looked up information about illnesses that can be linked to jet fuel exposure, it can cause problems, liver problems, kidney problems. It can cause neurological problems as well. These are serious effects that we could see in our children, in the health of our community. So I'm wondering, in the past, have there been such violations, and did it deter those airlines from doing this again?
So personally, I'm not aware of us issuing any NOVs to other airlines, but I could just tell you, just from a common sense standpoint, is that we can find them all they want and they're going to pay for it, but the biggest, I want to say, fine that they can get is the public relations. what they did to these communities is gonna last a lot longer than paying a fine. By the people here organizing, by the people here speaking their mind and letting them know what they did to their community was wrong, that's gonna be much more hurtful to them than writing a check to AQMD.
No, well, I really hope so, because we can't allow this to continue. In our community, we've been exposed much more than other communities to toxic chemicals and toxic environmental conditions that lead this area, the Southeast LA area, to have a much higher incidence of asthma and many other diseases that are caused by environmental pollutants. So I really hope that we send a message not just to Delta, but to other airlines that this is completely unacceptable, that our community is not going to stand for this. And yes, maybe in the past, when I was a child and my parents did not have the resources or the time to fight against this kind of environmental injustice, now that's changing. Many people who grew up here, like myself, who come from immigrant families, did go to university, and fortunately, we do have the education and the time to fight back. So I hope that they are taking a look at what's happening now, that our community is not going to take this anymore. We're going to fight back, and they're going to have to pay if they continue to do this to us. Thank you.
Oh, hello. Good afternoon. I am Jesse De La Cruz, the lead community organizer with From Lot to Spot, a nonprofit who builds community design green spaces in low-income communities. And the communities I work in suffer from food deserts, environmental and land use racism, and this jet fuel dumping is just another disgrace, another injustice to our community. And today I'm specifically going to address a concern that I've been hearing from our gardeners. So in behalf of our community gardens, Heart of Watts Community Gardens, Stanford Avalon Community Garden, Florence Firestone, New Beginnings, and Lennox Community Garden. My question will be directed to Public Health, Dr. Davis. And so we demand environmental justice for our residents in these impacted areas to receive full compensation and reparations for damages, as well as quality health care to assess any further damages. We also demand accountability, increased oversight, and regulation of pollutant sources like airplanes, commitment to the well-being of our communities, and a guarantee that this will never happen. Public Health, you released a statement regarding jet fuel release. For many of our gardeners, these gardens are their primary source of fresh food. Who is going to come test the soil at our gardens? Now, I've heard from LAFD stating that the fuel evaporated in the air, yet you released a statement stating that to discard of all of our vegetables. No one has come to our community gardens. These community gardens are open today. They will be open tomorrow. And this is fresh produce. We will hope so, that the whole community is consuming. Thank you.
Sure, and I appreciate that comment, and I know the impact that this incident has had, not only on personal gardens, but also on community gardens. And I think, as we look at what the specific fuel was, that tells us better what we would be testing for. And it's hard to say at the moment how widespread it was, and especially in terms of and how much. So I think the idea of understanding how much fuel was actually dumped and how much fuel may have landed and not evaporated in the air before it hit the ground, before it hit fruits, before it hit vegetables, is important to know. I do think that as we look more closely at the fuel and the additives that were in it, it'll give us a better idea as to what may be the life of that. But again, I still would recommend that those fruits and vegetables not be used as people were hit, and people did feel that on their skin. That means that it did hit the flowers, the plants, the fruits and the vegetables in the gardens, and it's hard to say, how you can actually clean that in a way that will allow people to be healthy and safe. In terms of the soil testing, we were having this discussion last night about, what can we do in order to make sure that soil gets tested. I think it's going to be a combination of folks. I think Delta should be responsible for this, as they were the organization that caused this incident. And I think we have to figure out exactly what that is and figure out exactly how we get that done. But that is something that we discussed, and we're working with Congresswoman Waters to figure out how we actually can take advantage of and do.
Thank you. I indeed feel that Delta is responsible for this, but as public health, this is a public space. Now that you are going to get these MSDS and what additives are in the jet fuel, I feel that public health needs to come to our community gardens, our community parks, and inform our people to not consume these products.
As we get in there, we'll definitely figure out what we need to do and take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joseph Moreno. I go to school at Bell High School, and I live in HB. And from what Delta has said, that's complete BS. That is the most BS I think I've ever heard in my life. And I should know I'm a teenager. But this is just environmental racism at its core, and this is just proof of it, right? We've seen this countless times where we have Exide, we have all these chemicals penetrating our community, our lifestyle, and I think this was just the tipping point where this was just too much for everybody. Our gardens, our animals, our environment, our children, even maybe my little brother here, have been affected by this dumping. And now we don't know how far it may have spread, but maybe we could start off by saying the surrounding cities about where the track was, because it was pretty windy that day. I know that for a fact. I was there. And this is just not fair. This is not fair that we have to go through this, that our community has to go through this, and Delta's not even here to hear us. That is just proof that they think that we're less than them, that our community is nothing. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Delta right now, a lot of their employees just got a 2-month raise. Now, instead of putting that money into helping our community, the community they impacted, and I understand people need to make money, I understand that. But come on, you ruined so many people's lives. Now, during that day, now that I look back on it, I took 2 showers because my eyes were so sore. And it helped, yes, but I shouldn't have to be taking 2 showers. My little brother shouldn't have to be coming home saying that his eyes are itchy. That's enough. This is enough of this. I'm sick and tired of my community being abused by all these companies thinking that they could just walk in here and just roll on over us. We have a beautiful park here. We have beautiful schools all around here that show us what a lifestyle should be, what a home should be. And because of this, we can't even roll around in our gardens or in the dirt, because you know why? We have lead in our dirt, and now apparently we have jet fuel in our dirt. So that's gonna be fun. And we have animals, we have lives, people. And because of this, our lives have been impacted. How do you expect kids like me and kids like my little brother to go on and be better if we're constantly being polluted? That's just setting us up to fail. That's just all it is. And I'm tired of it. I mean, how many of you have experienced this? We have all around us, it's just fast food. You go up to Beverly Hills, you go up to Hollywood, we're just organic all around you. And it's beautiful. And it's beautiful seeing all of these organic foods, and why can't we have this? Just because we're a lower community? Just because we're a lower community, it's just safe for them to dump fuel on us? Imagine how crazy that sounds. I'm gonna have to be telling my kids, when I was young like you, I got jet fuel dumped on me. Imagine how crazy that is to hear. Imagine how crazy that is to hear right now. We're in the 21st century. This is the prime for technology, for medicine. We're at its prime. This should be no excuse. This is a multi-million-dollar company. There should be no excuse for this. I'm sick and tired of it. I say we put an end to environmental racism, and we put an end to racism as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, you used to be the most impressive young man I'd ever met, and I just met this guy. So I'm not trying to make light of that, but that is a voice that we need to hear. That is a voice that the networks need to interview and the TV stations need to interview. I'm extremely impressed with just how articulate and measured and right on you are. So sorry, I didn't mean to take.
And he was at the Cudahy City Hall meeting, actually having a sign reading Brown Lives Matter too. I did take a picture of that. We'll be posting on Instagram. Don't worry, I got you. So I want to refer my attention to the community. I will be asking questions, but the answer should be not good. My name is David Resendez, and I'm starting a teen-run newspaper for the youth of Southgate, established in Southgate High School, to get the youth more informed, like Mayor Belen stated, disgusting incidents like these. We deserve environmental justice. How? By voting with our money. Will you get on an airline that is not willing to cooperate with the community it dumped its fuel on? No. We are waiting for the FAA to respond, they said. That's really interesting. I'm a cross-country and volleyball athlete. Every day, including the day of the incident, I, along with various surrounding teams in the area, run all around Southgate. Without a warning to go inside my home, Delta released its fuel, which according to the pilot initially was not necessary. We need action now. This is how we make a change. You call the FAA and you demand that the report gets released and all the information they have gets released to make a change. That number for the FAA is 866-835-5322. And for the youth of Southgate, create the change you want. This will be impacting our future. Follow Behind the Gate on Instagram for updates. Be informed, be involved. Thank you, guys.
Hi, my name is Thomas Buckley. I run the largest community social media page here in Southgate. I, like many of you...
Thomas, can I interrupt you just briefly?
Yeah, sure.
Because I just want to say thank you very much. So we've talked about getting the word out, and you were a huge part and have been a part of this community in getting accurate information out quickly. And you did that in this instance. So in the lack of having a reverse 911 or an Amber Alert, you were our reverse 911, and we really, really appreciate your efforts there. And that's not a commentary on your content. That's you stepping up. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my humble honor. And isn't it amazing? I'm looking at all these people here today, but noticeably absent is Delta. If someone broke my window, I would want them to be here. But here they are doing something even worse. And let me just adjust my mic. I apologize for this. Okay, well, there it goes. So anyways, I just want to thank everyone for being here for this meeting. I'm actually going to contend something different, something that you're not finding on this paper, something you're not hearing in the news. What is that? Well, first, let me just briefly tell you a little bit about my experience. I flew over Southgate as a co-pilot 2 months ago. I flew at 1,500 feet. I took video of City Hall and the Southgate Police Station. I put this on our Facebook page, Southgate Police Scanner, so people could see a perspective of what it looks like to be at 1,500 feet. I flew in a Piper Cherokee general aviation plane. The plane that Delta Flight 89, according to my data, flew over our city at 11:53 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at an altitude of 2,375 feet. And while I do my best to speak extemporaneously, I also do have some notes, so I'm going to go ahead and go with the notes. But I contend that this was not an emergency situation. Despite what everyone is hearing, this was not an emergency or also known as Mayday situation, but rather what is called a pan-pan, P-A-N, pan-pan situation. That means urgent. Why do I say this? Well, initially the pilot stated he had an emergency, and this is true. However, the pilot reversed his assessment of the emergency very quickly. Here is why. ATC requested fuel and souls on board, which is standard for any Mayday call. The pilot did not reply to this. ATC asked if he would like to fuel dump. The pilot stated, quote, "We got it back under control. We're gonna come back to LAX. We're not critical." ATC asks a second time if the pilot needs to fuel dump. The pilot states, quote, "Negative." So, in the pilot's own words, we're not critical. We got it back under control. Back under control. This is not an emergency situation. If anyone knows planes, this was a Boeing 777, 777-200. This is an ETOPS certified aircraft for international flight. It can fly easily with one engine if it needs to. So I contend this was a pan-pan urgent situation, not an emergency, and that changes everything, just to let you know. Delta has not admitted any negligence. Delta says everything is a pending investigation, and that's interesting because here we are so quick to say that everyone here is fine. Our health is great. The only thing worthy of an investigation is the negligence of this pilot, not the health of the community, not the testing of our soil and water. Would they be so quick to come to that same conclusion if it were their children who were their victims? If it were their children who were playing under the open skies? I don't think so. And now, here we are wondering about our lungs because we've been exposed to petroleum that have fallen from the skies above us. And now we don't know if there are any long-term effects because of, as our health experts said, the additives. What are the additives in this? We have no idea. Health experts have no ideas. And now they tell us we need to throw away our outdoor grown fruit and vegetables because they're potentially contaminated. So what does that say about our lungs? To our city attorney, res ipsa loquitur. That's a Latin phrase for the doctrine of law that allows proof of negligence by circumstantial evidence. If you're walking down the street and a window pane, something falls upon us. If this tile was to fall upon me right now, the city of Southgate would be in trouble. Windows, pans just don't fall on people randomly unless they're not properly installed. Jet fuel doesn't fall on people unless the pilot doesn't follow FAA protocol. But even more damning than that, something that is absolutely indefensible is the negligence of the pilot, in which he never communicated the fuel dumping at any time in flight to ATC. They only discovered he had fuel dumped after he had landed. Hazmat today tells us at 12:13 a.m. they were alerted to the situation. Transponder data that I've collected says that 11:53 a.m. the airplane was over our head dumping fuel. 20-minute difference. Imagine the response time. Had the pilot just conveyed to ATC, he dumped fuel, ATC in return tells our emergency services. Where are the disciplinary actions from Delta? Why did the Delta pilot stay silent about his actions to fuel dumping over people? Where are the investigations? There are investigations of their misfortunes, but not ours. Where is Delta today? They're not here. Delta, you must own this. You must be held accountable. If not by your own self-reflection, by your own conscience, then by the community, by litigation, and by those who will boycott your airlines for gross incompetence and negligence. Delta has set the precedent in how it defers responsibility. We must now set the precedent in how we bring our community justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Hi, Christine.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Cristina Montalvo. I'm a lifelong Southgate resident. Been in Southgate for 41 years. I am a mother, a wife, I've also worked within the city of Southgate in different businesses. Honestly, the first thing that came to my mind the day of the event was my child's in school, what's going on, and how do I get to her, and how do I protect her from what's going on. As a person who grew up attending San Gabriel Elementary School, it was very troubling. Thankfully, my daughter's school wasn't quote unquote affected, but through all these discussions, press releases, statements from different agencies, they say, oh, 2 schools were affected, 11 schools were affected, 26 schools in the Southeast were affected. Either way, we're all being affected. Our children shouldn't be infected this way. We need to demand, as the Southeast, Southgate, Bell, Cudahy, Downey, Jordan Downs, all the area schools, that the airlines do no longer dump on our schools. They no longer dump in our cities. We are not a wastebasket for them. They're not here today. And we need to not use Delta Airlines anymore. Nobody fly Delta. Let's show them where it hurts, the pocketbook, because they don't care about us.
Good evening. Thank you to City of Southgate and the Southgate City Council and all the residents who showed up today. My name is Francisco Carrillo. I'm the District Director and Acting Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Ninette Barragán. Me llamo Francisco Carrillo. Soy el director del distrito de la congresista Ninette Barragán. Tengo una declaración que anunciar. But first, let me start by saying that it is completely unacceptable that Delta did not show up today. It is disrespectful to the community. The Congresswoman and I have spoken to Delta officials to strongly encourage them to attend today's community meeting and to engage with our constituents. Now I'm going to read the statement on behalf of Congresswoman Barragán. Like you, I am deeply concerned about the Delta fuel jet dump over our communities. It's hard to understand why a pilot would decide to release a toxic substance over densely populated neighborhoods that include homes, businesses, and schools. Like you, I want answers. That's why Congresswomen Roy Allard, Waters Sanchez, and I have asked the Federal Aviation Administrator nearly 24 important questions about this disturbing incident, and we are demanding answers. My office and I will keep you posted as we learn more. Como ustedes, estoy profundamente preocupada por la descarga de combustible de Delta que fue arrojado sobre nuestras comunidades. Es difícil entender por qué un piloto decidir liberar sustancias tóxicas en comunidades densamente pobladas, incluyendo hogares, negocios y escuelas. Como ustedes, yo quiero respuestas. Es por eso las congresistas Robert Allard, Waters, Sánchez y yo le hemos pedido al administrador de Administración Federal de Aviación casi 2 decenas de preguntas importantes sobre este incidente y estamos exigiendo respuestas. Mi oficina y yo los mantendremos informados a medida que aprendemos más. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, and thank the Congresswoman also, please. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I actually had a question about the safety data sheet that I think was brought up by, was it a hazmat rep? So
He's going to come up so you can look at it. Sorry.
Thank you. So you are now in possession of the safety data sheet for what type of jet fuel was used. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The additives as well?
That is correct.
Can you tell us today what specific type of jet fuel was used?
Yes, it's called Type A jet fuel. I believe it's 99% kerosene. It does have naphthalene and ethylene butyl. This is a second constituent, and so again, there's 2 additives in that. There may be some proprietary chemicals on there, but it's unknown, of the inside the safety data sheet that we did receive.
Okay, so
So 2 additives.
What are the 2 additives that were there?
Hold.
Yes, well, it was also the manufacturer and brand of the jet
Okay.
fuel. I don't know if you have that.
Let me see if I have a copy.
And is that copy going to be available pretty soon to the public?
We will, yeah. So every document that's referenced, all the ones that are out there, we will get those onto our website. We have a separate URL, and I'll restate it. I believe it's deltafuelrelease.org, but don't quote me yet. I'll get it for you, and once he's finished, I'll get it.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so the two additives are naphthalene and ethylbenzene. Ethylbenzene, so it's ETHYL, benzene, BENZENE, and naphthalene, NAPHTALENE.
And the manufacturer of the jet fuel and the additives
That I
too?
don't have.
It doesn't say on the jet
Oh,
on
it does have it, but I don't have a copy of it right
Okay,
here.
got it, got
All I noted down was the two additives.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's great to know finally what the type and jet fuel was. Just for those in the audience that don't know, you can look up pretty easily the data sheet for jet fuel type A. It's like what's in it by manufacturer and the amount of information that's in it, but you can look at different manufacturers to kind of get an idea of what kind of potential, is it carcinogenic, does it cause reproductive harm, that sort of stuff will be listed on the safety data sheet. The U.S. Department of Public Health and Human Services has also released a report. Hold on, let me get the title. The report is called the Toxicological Profile of JP-5, JP-8, and Jet A fuels. And so that will have a little bit more of a comprehensive look at different fuels, but also Jet A specifically in terms of the research that's out there. And that hopefully should be useful that you guys can look at tonight. I did have a question in regards to, so I know that there was a meeting yesterday, there was a meeting today, and then we also had one last Friday in Cudahy. And I also know that there's right now being healthcare that's being provided free to people that were affected. I'm curious what the city of Southgate and then also other representatives that are here are doing to make sure that that is more accessible to the public. I've actively been looking for this information. I didn't even know about the meeting that was yesterday. And I know that there's a timeline in terms of how long that healthcare is going to be available for. So that seems really important for people to have access to.
So, yeah, so hold on one sec. We'll have Altamed come up and do a refresh on the access to healthcare. Great questions. This flyer is the flyer that has all of the contact information, and it is deltafuelrelease.org. It's just easier to memorize than going to the city's website and then traversing that website. So deltafuelrelease.org, and then that will route you directly to all of the information. As the city of Southgate gets information, we continue to push it out. We're trying to be a clearinghouse for you and for everyone in this room and everyone in the community, for all the information that public health is putting out, that Ultimate's been putting out, that Delta's been putting out. I hate to even say their name. That FAA has been putting out, and others. So with that, for update on.
Of course. Yes, so the healthcare services that we're providing are no-cost services. I know that there is a information sheet that's being passed out tonight as well with other clinics. I'm not sure if they are offering no-cost services, so you all can work to confirm that. Our services, we began offering them on Thursday, and they're available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., starting on Thursday, Friday, today. And we extended the understanding that there was a bit of a hurdle in making sure that folks were getting the information and knew of the availability of the services. Were extended to Monday and Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Also understanding that folks have to work and, there's limitations on time. I did also want to share that with the understanding that we share your concern that folks receive the information. We also leveraged our own networks and reached out to about 40 other community partners that are either located here in the affected area, but broadly the Southeast Los Angeles area, or do business in the area, right, and serve the communities. And so we've been doing that, social media posts, and we've been coordinating with the city of Southgate and Cudahy as well to make sure that we're sharing that information.
Has there been any communication with, for example, schools in the various cities that have been affected, like getting them the information so they can disseminate it to parents?
Yeah, so we have deferred on the communications plan to allow the cities to really lead that. We're just supplementing and complementing the efforts, and so I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, so a couple different efforts. One was hand delivering hard copy to each school in Southgate, and then also to the libraries and all of our park facilities like this facility here. And then a real aggressive approach. We, on a very short timeline, hand delivered 15,000 to 15,000 households hard copy of the Ultimed services that are being provided. So, and those were all done within an 8-hour period yesterday was when those went out. And we did our best to, we're really in a timeline crunch. We did our best to get to as many households as possible, as quickly as possible so that we could take advantage of what is it's not a short window, it's a very generous window, but it's still a relatively quick time that folks have to get to the doctor. So, and then of course, social media, word of mouth, and et cetera. Right?
Okay, awesome, thank you.
I do want to add just in terms of, yeah, the no-cost services are being offered until Tuesday. However, we are a community clinic. So we are here in the community. We focus on underserved communities, low-income communities, folks who qualify for Medi-Cal, government-sponsored programs, Covered California. So we do have our enrollment folks here today so they can make that assessment. If you're not able to make it to the clinic, we still are here to provide health care to you, right, in a low-cost manner. If you don't qualify for any of the programs, we also have a sliding fee scale, which determines the cost of services based on an individual's income. So it's also very low cost. So I just don't want to say that we're not here after Tuesday. We're here. We've been around for 50 years, and we'll continue to be committed to these communities.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. We are so thankful you're in our community and a new member of our community as well.
The last thing I wanted to add was more to the community that's here. We have a lot of representatives that are here, a lot of public officials that are here who are hopefully here to support us and make sure that we are getting the resources we need. But I think is to reiterate some of the comments made by other speakers, it really is going to be a matter of us staying on top of it, really pushing Delta, really making sure that we're paying attention to the health effects that we may be seeing, you know, a month, 2 months, years down the line, and holding Delta accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Honorable City Council, Damas y Caballeros, my name is Carlos Colorado, and I'm an attorney, but I'm here in the capacity as a citizen. My wife grew up in Southgate. Her parents live just a couple of blocks from St. Gabriel Elementary, one of the schools that was dumped on. And I want to target my remarks this afternoon primarily to the statement that was submitted by Delta. As an attorney, I just find it objectionable that this statement should even be admitted into the record. I know that it has to be part of the public record, but I would encourage the council to greatly discount the statement by the fact that Delta's not here, that there's not even a name affixed to the statement. It's an anonymous statement that was obviously composed in a PR capacity by Delta. It's a statement that is self-serving. Instead of serving the interests of the community, this statement is serving Delta's interest. It's just geared to make Delta look good rather than to provide the community information. You know, Delta says, we've attended 2 town halls already. Well, that's kind of a slap in the face. They're not here. You know, what is that, a flyover? They think that by releasing this flyer that they're going to be able to placate and address the concerns, the legitimate concerns that have been raised by that incident. I think not. I think that rather than a statement defending Delta and extolling its values and its commitment to safety, what we need to know is the dispersion pattern of the fuel. You know, it's a shame that we had to obtain the additives of the fuel by doing detective work when Delta has this information and they have refused to provide it. They hide behind this shield of there's an investigation. But as an attorney, it's been stated before and it's false to make that kind of claim that because there's an investigation that we can tell you nothing. I mean, obviously you respect investigations, but the investigation at issue, the FAA investigation, has to be focused on the flight, on the problems that the plane experienced. Entirely a different issue than the health crisis, the community crisis, the public health crisis that we are dealing with. That should be not, the information regarding that aspect should not be guarded. It should be in the open, and we should expect full transparency. And so, in addition to that, this statement contains misleading statements to the extent that we are being told that with respect to the types of health efforts that are underway, well, I think it's completely honorable and laudable that we have people in the community that are doing health screenings, and I applaud that. I think that there's something very misleading in a statement like the one that has been provided that suggests that simply having health screenings is going to cover all of the health concerns that are raised by an incident like this. What about, because the health screenings, according to this statement, it says if you're experiencing symptoms, you know, go to one of these health screenings. But what if you're not experiencing symptoms? We need to be told about the effects that might be undetected. And so for that and many other reasons, this statement is almost worthless. I mean, it's completely worthless to the community, and it should be, and that should be taken into account by the council when it considers the statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I also should have said this about 20 speakers ago. Appreciate you giving us your name. Those folks, if you had specific questions or comments, or you were expecting a specific response from us, or you'd like us to get back in contact with you, if you didn't state your name, please do so at the city clerk's table before the evening concludes. That way we have contact information directly for you. We are going to do our best to respond to each question in some format, or provide you with direction to resources on our website. But if you were expecting a specific response to you, we just need to be able to contact you. Sorry, I'm taking your time.
Is Dr. Ron Birnbaum. I'm a physician, and my specialty is dermatology. And I work at Harbor UCLA Medical Center and at a federally qualified health center called Eisner Health. Although I'm not an employee of the county, I'm going to point that out, which is that there's nobody here from the Department of Health Services, and nor was there anybody at Cudahy. There's somebody from Public Health, but nobody from DHS is here, and that's unacceptable. I want to stick to the format, which is to ask some questions. I certainly have a lot of thoughts, but I want to ask some questions. But I'll tell you the overarching thought that I had when I went to the Cudahy session and this, which is that this is an unprecedented event of a large magnitude, and the response to it, while well-intended, is underwhelming, amateurish, and not enough. And it's not because people aren't trying hard, it's just that the people who are trying hard, this is, I think, beyond their scope or beyond things they're used to doing, because it's an unprecedented event. I'll try to explain that. I want to ask some questions. So first, I'd like to ask for a couple people from the fire department. Representatives from the fire department, please. Hazmat and... This is sort of more of a rhetorical question, but it's an important one. It's to make a point. And I do not want to disparage the big effort that you guys made. It's just, this stuff doesn't happen every day. So it's been clear that because that MSDS just came out, we didn't know what all of the exposures were. So how were you able to give the all clear to reopen schools and that kind of thing without having the information that was only obtained 2 weeks later?
There was not an all clear given from the fire department, but I can tell you that the constituents that were in that fuel are very common. Those are very common industrial chemicals.
Wait,
I'm sorry?
Oh,
So
what is in jet fuel is generally known. It's mostly kerosene.
Kerosene, ethylbenzene, and the naphthalene. Those three chemicals right there are easily detected by combustible gas indicators or PIDs, which were used extensively in the operational area, and there was no detection of those chemicals present during our operation or afterwards.
But not necessarily reassuring about health risk, right?
Well, sir, I can tell you that the readings were 0 for those constituents.
And the same thing went through my head when I heard that in Cudahy. Doesn't pass the smell test. Literally, people could still smell things, and that just means that there's your detectors can only detect what you're trying to detect, right? So how can you detect things when you don't know what you're trying to detect?
Those three chemicals are detectable by our instrumentation.
Right, but you didn't know yet that those were all the...
Well, I can tell you that those three chemicals, those constituents, are read by the monitors that we use, and those monitors read 0.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask a question or a couple of questions for a representative from all. Yeah. So let me preface this with, so I was a physician in the Navy, and I am a dermatologist, so I deal with strange things that get on people's skin as part of my work. And yet, it has to be clarified that there's no experience in the history of the world where a bunch of children and adults were sprayed with jet fuel. So nobody sitting around Ultimed actually knows quite what that means, right? So I do not at all want to discourage people from going to get help there. But let me then frame this as a question, and wanted to follow up on one of the comments that you made. Who are the specialists, and what do the people at Ultimed know about exposures to jet fuel and its unknown additives?
Yeah, so obviously I'm not a medical provider, but we do have very experienced and qualified physicians. And so anybody that's presenting, they're going to evaluate their individual circumstance, as you know, as a physician. So I could not tell you the resumes of our physicians, but we hire them. They're very qualified to work in our clinics. But so I'm not a physician.
Right, I'm sure they're qualified to give primary care or whatever specialty care is given for ordinary circumstances, of which this is not one.
We're providing primary care.
Right. So what do people? I mean, so has there been an educational effort or some kind of special effort related to occupational type health exposures like this, which wasn't occupational for the people who were exposed?
We're providing care that we provide every single day. We don't have a specific effort, but it's our primary care that we provide on every single day. So it's our normal course of care.
For an abnormal exposure that people are going to be unfamiliar with. So the other...
Well, we're providing primary care. That's what we're equipped to do. That's our specialty.
Understood. So I also appreciated that you were having people come without reference to a protocol, but it makes it strange for people who aren't sure if they've had, like they don't have symptoms. And the questions that the gentleman before me asked were, I think, to the point, which is how do you know what's going to happen tomorrow or in a year or whatever? And so it strikes me that part of the effort, especially if it's a big effort, and I appreciate the passing out of 15,000 leaflets to try to get people to come, it is a short window, in fact. It's a short window, which is people have to actually try to collect exposure and symptom information from people who are exposed and not exposed. Otherwise, the world will never know, and the people who are affected will never know if something they're experiencing was related to this or not. This is again, a rhetorical question because this isn't what AltaMed does normally.
Right, I mean, I think that as a physician that works for Eisner Health, which is a counterpart to AltaMed, a federally qualified health center, I would imagine you're very familiar with the type of care that we provide.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think on the rhetoricals, that's just kind of a tough one for us, but we're doing the best that we can in providing the health care that we're specialized to provide.
Right. Again, I'm not discouraging anybody from going and seeking health care. I'm just saying just showing up and going to see somebody who's never seen anybody who's been like slimed with jet fuel is going to leave a lot of questions unanswered if it's not studied systematically, which makes me want to bring up Dr. Davis from Public Health.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. You mentioned that it's been hard to know because the Delta hasn't been very forthright, and they haven't, with what, in fact, the nature of the exposure was. This is my question for you, which is, if I'm a resident of this community, and 8 or 9 years from now I'm having a health problem, how do I know if it was because of this exposure or it was something else? In other words, what is the effort going to be to longitudinally follow the community that was involved? And do you believe that the Los Angeles County Department of Health, Public Health, can manage that activity? Or do we need the help of bigger capacity organizations like the Centers for Disease Control of the federal government?
So,
two-part question.
all right, yeah, I got it. So typically in terms of longitudinal studies, that is not something that we are normally doing. We're doing general surveillance in terms of what's happening with the health and tracking that. Speaking of cancer, there is a cancer registry, an organization that is designated in order to follow cancer among the community and look where there may be elevated risk. And so that question of whether or not some of these chemicals could have caused cancers, that's a question that they can look at and study. That's specifically what their responsibility is. In terms of thinking about in terms of thinking about the longer-term health impacts, looking at what's there, trying to understand exactly what the potential of the intensity of the exposure, and again, this is why it's important to understand what time it started, how it might have spread in terms of wind pattern, what amount would have come out. Those things may better be able to say, how much of a risk this may have caused. But I think that the difficulty is in all of this, the exposure may cause some things in that, but actually pinning it on that may be difficult to do. But I think that giving the information on here are the things to watch out for would be helpful for people to consider what may have impacted their health should those consequences come up that we see that may be long-term impacts.
So I got you that it's not usually, the Department of Public Health doesn't usually follow big cohorts of people who are exposed to ask questions about their well-being, which is a big epidemiology effort.
Yeah, that's a study.
So I guess I'll stop asking questions and make kind of a final statement, which is it is my opinion that somebody from Los Angeles County, not a fragmented effort of small municipalities, as well-intended as everybody is here, but somebody at the level of Los Angeles County, which is the health part of our government is done through health, and which has purview over the entire area that's involved, should be spearheading this effort. And they should be bringing to the effort the Centers for Disease Control and the Epidemiology Intelligence Service to do a big cohort study to see what's going on, and that can include actually providing health care or using local health resources to provide health care. And the bill should no question be going to Delta for that. And therefore, there shouldn't be a limitation in people's head about how much money this is going to cost.
Okay. And I would say that is something that definitely can be demanded of Delta in terms of looking at that and paying for that. So that is something I hear you. We've had this thing come up before in terms of health studies after incidences, and this is where I think, you know, those that are responsible should pay for these things, because it's not something that we're normally set up to be able to do.
Right. But I gotta say, I'm underwhelmed by the legal effort so far. In other words, why is it that for moral reasons or threats of criminal or civil liability, nobody could do some kind of discovery and just get the direct information from Delta immediately? And I think that's an indictment of the legal offices that have been involved in this.
Thank you for your statements, Doctor. My name is Alejandro. I do have some specific questions, but I'd like to read first some excerpts from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services toxicological profile for JP5, 8, and JA fuels. This is a direct quote. Very limited data on the toxicity of kerosene-based jet fuel in humans. Mainly, they are laboratory animal studies and occupational studies. Also, children are not small adults. They differ in their susceptibility to hazardous chemicals. Children's unique physiology and behavior can influence the extent of their exposure. For example, absorption may be different in neonates because of immaturity of the gastrointestinal tract and their larger skin surface area and proportion to body weight. Children also have a longer remaining lifetime in which to express damage from chemicals. There are no studies examining health effects of Jet A in children. Now, that's particularly important to point out what the doctor was saying. This is an unprecedented situation, and we need to make sure that our responses are severe enough. Now, my specific questions are going to be for, for Manager Pat Shannon for LAUSD. First off, thank you for all your help, Manager Shannon. My question first is going to be, who made the decision to power wash vertical surfaces in the school campuses?
That decision was made in conjunction with the county health, county fire.
Okay.
So it was not done in a vacuum. And I wanted to just take the time to point out the citizen or the lady that had a question about what we did with the water, worried about runoff. For the district operations on our campuses, we had vacuum trucks. So the district had contacted the Regional Water Quality Control Board and got guidance from them in regards to runoff. So we made sure best management practices that water was captured, put in the vacuum trucks and disposed of properly. So thank you for that question.
Perfect, thank you so much. The reason I asked that is because the MSDS does state that power washing is not an acceptable containment method. So thank you for that information. Since you power wash vertical surfaces, how were soil or green areas that children are in contact with decontaminated?
Once again, working with the county health, the sprinklers were turned on, and we do know overnight also air conditioning systems were left on, and that based on that action, that it was safe for those schools to reopen and the children. Also on the play surfaces. The play surfaces, playground equipment was wiped off, and then we had clearance for outdoor activity.
Perfect, thank you. The reason I asked that specifically is because you can't really rinse through soil or grass and expect that you're going to know that it'll be cleaned. And the reason I say that, or specifically JA, is the MSDS states that the partition coefficient and sorption risk for JA is not known. The research is not provided, so we can't know that even if it was rinsed, that it was clean and it did exit the soil, it could still be there.
And point taken. And once again, in consultations with the state agencies as far as edible gardens and things like that, it was determined, and we were just following the guidance given to us by the county health and other agencies in regards to throwing away those vegetables and then waiting. And then working now, we're hearing that in order to find out whether or not soil testing is necessary.
Well, soil testing is definitely necessary, and I appreciate your answers. Please don't feel like I'm attacking you personally at all. It's just, as the doctor stated, this is an unprecedented statement for those of us who have
Absolutely.
the knowledge. This is very concerning. We want to make sure that the proper routes are being taken. Thank you. My further statement here isn't so much of a question for you, Manager Shannon. It's just in response to the hazmat statement regarding the ingredients, the additives for MSDS. So for JA, you stated that there were 2 additives, correct? Okay. So you pointed out that they were, from your knowledge, it was 99% refined kerosene, 1% naphthalene, and the additives included, ethyl benzene, and what was the second?
Naphthalene.
Okay, so naphthalene and ethyl benzene were the additives. I want to point out, as your colleague, I believe the chief, was stating, these are very common. Anybody here can walk into an AutoZone and leave with those 3 ingredients for less than $15. That is the reason you receive this list. Those are all the petroleum distillates. These are not additives. This is simply the ingredients for the jet fuel for JA. What we need are the proprietary chemicals, because those are the ones that are of primary concern, specifically because for these industries, we rely on what is referred to as self-regulation. There is no testing by government agencies. There is no accountability other than if the industry itself is concerned with exposure for the population. And it's very clear that that's not necessarily a concern for Delta. So I encourage you, if you can, to keep pushing for that information.
Okay.
I appreciate your help. Thank you.
John Montalvo. John, am I this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't touch it. Okay, am I good?
You're good.
Okay, basically what happened, because I'm not too familiar with the technical stuff, it basically looks like Delta crop dusted our area with jet fuel. The biggest difference from what's going on with Delta is just one number. Because we're in the 90280, they don't care. If this happened in 90210, they would be all over it. They're treating us like garbage by not sending any representation out here. Now, on the jet fuel, I did look at some things, and the gentleman before me kind of hit on it with the additives, but basically on every blend, there's over 2,000 chemicals in any specific jet fuel that they use. And those chemicals are all of them are harmful to human beings. As far as when the spraying went down on the children, just from what I looked at, on children, it says it causes pneumonia, lung damage, learning disabilities, as well as kidney failure in their late 20s if it's not treated correctly. As the doctor pointed out, the medical treatment screening is no way any good for what we're looking for. I mean, they're not even looking for specifically any of these 2,000 other chemicals that are in the jet fuel that can cause harmful breathing, headaches, respiratory problems. It even says here urinating, blood in your urine. I'm just really, I'm trying to speak correctly, but I just can't. It just really pisses me off that they take us for granted because we're colored people. If this happens in another part of the state or country, everybody comes down, but since it happens to us, in Southgate, just living here, there's so much in the environment that it takes 10 years off of your life. So if you live in Southgate, you lose a decade of your life off the bat because of everything that's happening on there. And as far as the testing goes, that same equipment is the same one they used, I remember, in that Aliso gas, when they had that gas leak over there. And that same equipment said that there was no gas, no harm to any of the residents. And yet, 2 years later, they found the residents were suffering from respiratory problems. A lot had cancer. So I don't have any confidence in that equipment that's being used to test for those pathogens or whatever that's in the schools and stuff. Not just our children are affected, our animals, our pets, our senior our senior citizens, as well as anybody just walking around. The doctor also pointed out on the long-term effects of this. What kind of soil samples are you doing? Are you just doing topsoil? Are you going 3 feet down? Are you doing an in-depth one that hits the granite? Nobody's specific. Nobody has answers. The only answers that we're getting is, I don't know, maybe throw the food away, maybe the next crop will be good. That's not 100%. And that's not acceptable to us. We may be a low-income area, but we are human. We love, we breathe. We're just like everybody else, and we should not be treated any different than anybody else. The path that the plane took when it was crop dusting us with jet fuel, we don't know where it went. They think it went in a straight line. It could be anywhere. And like the gentleman before said, just power washing it is not going to do anything. And what's it going to do? Run off into our streets, go in the ground, affect it's just like oil going into the river. And I'm really disappointed today. I don't see our state senator here today. She's the one, Lena Gonzalez, should be here today or have some representation because she has direct access to the FAA. And she should be here on top of this. I see the speaker here. I see your Congressman Barragan here. And honestly, our senator should be here because this is something, like I said, she has direct influence over, and nothing's being done. I apologize to everybody. I'm probably sound like I'm ranting, but like I said, it's really upsetting when it affects our kids, and nobody's even doing anything about it. It's just like people said before, environmental injustice is basically what's happening to us. Lastly, I have just one question for our city attorney. Since a lot of people are affected in our city, is the city going to put together a lawsuit to represent us against Delta? Because the only way they're going to understand is hitting them in the pocketbook. They won't understand any other means.
Yeah, as you know, the city itself is responsible and has standing to be able to bring a claim for damage that occurs to the city property, to damage that occurs as a result of nuisance. When the Southern California Gas Company unleashed the gaseous effects, the city attorney for Los Angeles filed a lawsuit against the gas company as a nuisance. And so the remedies that the city has to bring a lawsuit against Delta are based on claims that the city would possess, most likely nuisance. The ability to, and that's damage to property, but it's typically property that belongs to the city. I would encourage anyone and everyone within the city who believes that they have been injured as a result of this to consult with the lawyer of their choice. I am sure that there's going to be a class action suit that's going to be filed against Delta. There'll be a number of lawyers that will be representing a number of individuals there. There's already been a private suit filed on behalf of teachers that worked at one of the schools. And so there will be a number of different claims. There's also the ability to file a claim directly with Delta. And Delta has set up a number. I don't have it. I'm not their representative. But that is on their website, I believe, or it's available there, or we will provide information there. But the role of the city is doing exactly what it's doing today. It's assembling the people, it's bringing information to the community. It wants to make sure that the community has informed consent, the ability to decide for themselves what path they want to take and when they want to take it. If it's a course in pursuing medical treatment, if it's a course in pursuing rights using a lawyer, that's our role. Our role is to provide information and to bring together the experts and to allow a forum like we're allowing today to get information from the residents as well as to inform the residents. So I think you'll be seeing a continuing effort on the city on that part, but we would not have standing. We would not have the individual right to bring a lawsuit against Delta on behalf of the individuals. That is not something that any city would be able to do under any circumstance.
And just one last thing, Delta, we're not going to stand down. We're going to keep fighting you and fighting you and fighting you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Moreno, and I am really mad that Delta uh, the, that Delta dropped a bunch of fuel in Southgate. There's people here that
Put you here. Come here. Here, try this one. Here you go. Here. Here you go.
that live here, and kids want to play outside, but they can't since Delta dropped a bunch of fuel. And there's a park that kids play, but they really can't since Delta dropped a bunch of fuel. So I'm actually really pissed. So why? So if anybody heard this, think before you act. But Delta didn't even think. They just act by dropping the fuel in Southgate. Thank you.
All right, we're going to have to kind of pass this microphone back just a little bit. And I know we're getting towards the end. We're about a half over our stated time. I want to be respectful to our speakers in particular, because I know you're giving up time like we all are on our Saturday. If we could, maybe we'll go specifically with questions, if you've got questions, and then we can double back on statements. So if there's anybody that has a specific question, I just want to make sure we get the questions, because I know the doctor is being pulled in different directions. Is there a question specifically for the experts? And if there's not, we'll just continue on with statements. And I want to thank the panel again. We really appreciate your time. But as long as you can stick around, it would be beneficial for all of us. But I also specific question. Yeah, is it okay if she goes ahead? Is that okay? Okay, thanks. Just with a question, then we'll go right back to you.
Thank you about that. My name is Susie de Santiago, and I live in Carajay. The reason I'm here is because in our city, there's a lot of fruit trees there. Hello? People are having their community gardens as well. So I know it's that everybody has said, throw away your fruit and the next crop should be good. But we're just assuming that that's the case. Hello? Okay, so we're just assuming that that's the case. And I understand health is the main concern. People's health, that is the priority. But the food that we consume, that also becomes part of our health. So my question is, yes, we throw away the fruit that's there. But what guarantees do we have, like other people have stated, what guarantees do we have that that soil that is going into the fruit trees is not going to be contaminating the new fruit? So my point here is the soil needs to be tested, and we need to stop, or whomever needs to stop, telling people just throw away the fruit and everything will be good. The soil, again, needs to be tested, and who is going to be responsible for testing the soil to ensure that the fruit that is consumed, that is produced from those trees and consumed, is going to be good for human consumption? So that's my question.
Thank you. And I'm not sure who on the panel is able to answer that one. And again, the questions that we don't have direct answers to, we're going to get those responses for you, and then we'll post those on the website. And the website is located. It's what did I tell you it was? It's right here, deltafuelrelease.org. So deltafuelrelease.org for those specific questions. And I don't know if Dr. Davis has a response with regard to, and I know you were conducting interviews and doing things, but the specific question was, what about soil testing, and then what about if you're told to throw away the fruit, but what about the fuel that got on the ground, and then I'm assuming that gets up into the roots and into the fruits system, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that is what we want to try to figure out as we look at the specific data sheet for what was dropped. And again, in theory, most of this should evaporate, so it should, aerosolize and go into the air. But I think those components about what would stay in the soil, how long it might stay in the soil, whether we know it or not, and what will we be looking for in terms of the testing are the things that we need to figure out now that we have the information.
Yeah, but like I said, in theory, everything is presented that way, but we don't need theories. We need proof, and that's what I'm here to ask for. We need proof. We need testing to be done on that soil to ensure that it is safe to consume, that it is safe for us to continue having those trees there.
So
those
as
fruit trees, those
yeah.
fruit gardens. I mean, we don't want theories. We want answers.
I'm not giving you theory. I'm saying that once we understand what's there, we figure out what we are able to test for and what tests to do. And so I'm saying now that we have that information, we'll figure that out and do what we need to do in terms of understanding that. Okay. So I think we have to figure out how much we can actually do, because it's unprecedented. This is not something that we are naturally set up to do. I think what we should do is work with your cities to figure out how to manage that. And again, I think we have to figure out the extent of the geographic area that was impacted. So we'll have to work through that, but definitely we want to know the same questions you want to know in terms of what's happening with the soil. Is there still a risk? What's happening to the trees? Do the trees have to be totally discarded? We don't understand at the moment, but we have to get more information to understand that. So I think, as I said, the best thing that we can do is probably work with cities to figure out how best to get people to have their soil tested.
And then in the meantime, I mean, while we're figuring that out, and I think in the meantime, we should stop telling people to just throw away the fruit trees and that the new harvest should be good to eat. I think that's one thing that needs to be stopped.
Understood.
It says it right here. It says here under jet fuel release, number 5, it says, what should I do if I have a garden or fruit trees?
Yeah.
And then the answer
yes,
says,
and as I said earlier, we said that based on understanding what we knew and what should be, what should happen
but I
based on
think
what we
this is
understand
something that
So-
would have been known from the beginning.
And as I said, in terms of really understanding what is there, what's in that particular fuel, we can update that information and change our guidance as needed. So we will do that as we look at specifically what was there in terms of the data sheet on that particular fuel, and we will update that guidance.
Okay, thank you. And also, if there's can be like a list made up, or where people can log in and just have their information entered, so that they can be one of those that need to be, or that their property can be one of those that can be tested.
Okay, see what we can do. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joshine Liberto, and I'm from Huntington Park. And I'm just speaking on behalf of my father. He's not here, he's out of the country. This is for Delta, more specifically. He's a retired aviation engineer. So there are aviation engineers that live in their community. So our eyes are on you, okay? First and foremost. He was head of quality control. Another thing is, he did mention that this is straight up an act of gross negligence, okay? So this should be taken very seriously, and cities should too. Another thing is, this is more specifically for my community, Sela, Southeast LA, is that we should come together collectively as a community and connect with grassroots organizations that have our best interests in mind. That is like East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice or Communities for a Better Environment, which we're connected with, or I'm connected with more specifically. Please, let's connect, because the thing is, we cannot rely on other people to take care of us, as you could see. Okay, so take your health, our health collectively very serious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosa Luna, and I've been a longtime resident of Southgate, and I'm also the mother of a child that attends Tweedy Elementary. The day that the fuel was dumped over in our area, my son was in school, and at the time that this happened, my son was outside eating lunch. I hear all the information and I hear all the questions that are being out here, but there was a lot of things that I know that was not being told to us, the parents, or even to the community, that I'm myself am finding out here at this meeting. My concern is, when you mention chemicals, when you mention fuel, to me, it's a carcinogen. It's eventually, in time, it's gonna cause cancer. And that's my concern now for my son. He is only 10. And to even know that he was out there eating lunch, how do I know that some of that fuel, even if it's just a pellet size, that falls into their food, that not only him, but the rest of the children that were there in the school are going to be affected with this carcinogens? And my feelings with Delta right now, I wish they would have been here. And if this is going to Delta, you're in for a long fight. Because if these children, if this community, if all these adults start getting sick because of, like they said, the negligence of your pilot of doing something that he was or she was not supposed to do, you're in for a long fight. And I can tell you that at this time, as I'm speaking, I am furious. I am livid because this happened. Tweedy Elementary, if I recall from my memory, has already gone through, and this was years back if I recall, through a situation where we had chemicals at a school when it was located here on Southern Place, I believe, and also on Tweedy. And so now with this situation here, it's not fair to us as a community. It's not fair to us, the people that live here as residents in the city of Southgate. And I ask that our council people here currently and the ones that will be here in the future to not forget about us. Don't forget about this situation, and please continue to help us to fight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry I'm back, but I actually had a couple of follow-up questions. One, I didn't really see anybody answer my previous question with regards to the reimbursement, whether, I don't know, there's been talk that perhaps some people have already been getting payments and are getting non-disclosure agreements. Does anybody know whether that's happening? Another question related to that is, who's keeping track of how many people are affected? I know that the council members were asking us to call Delta to let them know how we were affected. But I mean, what's the reality of, or what are the chances that that information is going to be publicly disclosed? I think that this was a missed opportunity for the local health department to actually take initiative in the matter, as the doctor mentioned, at the very least to keep track of how many people and what have been affected, what the symptoms are. Because people don't know. I didn't know that my stomach problems were even related to that. I thought it was something else. And it wasn't until the last meeting in Cudahy that two other community members mentioned the same thing, and I started putting things together. So there might be health problems that people are experiencing and they don't even know. And by the time Tuesday comes, passes by, and people hear about this, like, maybe they might be realizing. Another thing I didn't mention that I hope other people would talk about were their pets. I've had friends, at least 3 friends of mine, mention that their older dogs passed away right after the fuel dump. And people, I understand that it's hard to make the connection that, that it was specifically related to the fuel dump. But I'm telling you, if you guys were there when the fumes were around, it was just unbearable. I can't imagine an older dog that's already, having a hard time getting around, really, pushing through that. So the other thing too with the air monitoring that happened right after, a gentleman from the fire department mentioned the PID, the photo ionization units, the photo detector units. Yeah, the photo ionization detector. I actually use those for work, and I just know from experience that they're very unreliable. I hope you guys use some really fancy ass PIDs, because when I've used the ones, they're really relative to how good they were calibrated, whether they're calibrated to hexane, isobutylene, how often are these machines even serviced. Did you guys even calibrate them the day of? You have to pretty much calibrate them the day of to clean air. And where is there clean air when, the whole area is impacted? I really think that, the Air Quality Management District, the ARB, really needs to start making some sort of protocol to actually capture air, use SUMA canisters, use any vacuum Tedlar bags, I don't know, have a lab, a local lab come and take some Tedlar readings. I mean, it's not impossible to get a better measurement of the air quality. You know, there's labs around here. They're not that far. They could have been here within 20 minutes. You guys are all the way in Diamond Bar. I mean, that's really inaccessible too. And I don't know why you guys picked that location because it's fancy up in a hill somewhere. But I mean, it's really, it's unattainable to us.
So
And-
first to answer your question about why Diamond Bar, we are the jurisdiction, we have jurisdiction in 4 counties, LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino County. That's smack dab in the middle of our jurisdiction. Number 2, your question about Tevlar bags and Suma canisters. Again, like I said earlier, the first thing we did was we sent inspectors out. The inspectors did notice the odor. We issued the NOV. We also asked for the other inspectors to come out and take samples. They came out, again, just like the fire department said, they were non-detect. Now, we do exactly what you said, is that and if you've ever been to our lab, and I urge you to go, CB's been there, other nonprofits have been there, we do exactly what you said. We calibrate them every day when they go out. We don't just use the same one we used the day before and not calibrate it. We clean it out. So our instruments could not pick up any of the chemicals that were in there.
And these are PIDs?
You know what? I am not a technical person, but I know that they came out with, I believe it was Kevlar bags and also the Suma canisters.
Oh.
Those things are the ones it's like a
Yeah.
vacuum and it just
They'll-
sucks in the
yeah.
air. So, and they
They go through the gas chromatographer, yeah.
Yep.
All right, no, it was just when I heard PID, I mean, if you guys are relying on those, those are not reliable instruments. I mean, I use them for work to assess soil vapors, which are very minimal. And like you said, sometimes they'll spike. Sometimes there won't be any readings, and I'll get lab results for soil, groundwater, come back with, you know, TPH, VOCs in the thousands. So, I mean, that's not really a good, reliable instrument for VOCs in air.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cindy. I grew up in the city of Maywood, and I currently live here in Southgate. I've been living here for the last 2 years, and I went from living in exide contaminated soil, and now one of my big concerns is the jet fuel oil that could still be in soils in the whole neighborhood. So I want to ditto, echo, and support a lot of the concerns that community members have already said in regards to the soil. And an additional concern to community's public health is also the mental well-being of our community members. I did see in the news a child talking about what happened and crying in the middle of it. I saw a community member essentially almost having like a panic attack at the town hall in Cudahy. So I think aside from the physical well-being of people who smelled and inhaled everything from the jet fuel dropping, I'm also concerned of the long-term trauma and impact that this has on community members. Like our mayor mentioned earlier, like we shouldn't always have to be resilient. And this is one of those other scenarios where community members should have access to mental health and mental health resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
I live in Southgate since 1973. Now I'm 68 years old. So I can tell you how young I was when I moved to Southgate. And I've always been very grateful to the city of Southgate that they do take care of matters. When I have a complaint or I have something to discuss, I have discussed with them and they have done what they're supposed to do. On this day of the fluid, the dumping of the fluid, I was outside hanging out clothes in my backyard. I still hang clothes. So, and I felt a mist. And I thought it was raining. I look up and I say, that's strange. You know, that mist and doesn't seem like it. So I continued to do my hanging of the clothes. And then I started to have my eyes watery, tightness on my chest, and coughing, but I didn't know why. I was strong odors, but I didn't know what it was. So one of the gardeners. They do lawns, and our block was cutting the grass, and I thought it was the equipment they was using. So I went inside the house, and about an hour and a half later, or 2 hours, is when I find out that that's what it was. If I would have known right away, I would have gone inside the house and put myself in the shower and cleaned myself, but I didn't. So all that mess stayed in my body until I read it on Facebook. So now I have headaches and dizziness. Dizziness is dangerous at my age because you can be in the bathroom and fell down and break a bone or something. I'm 68 years old, but I have no diabetes and I have no high blood pressure. So they cannot say that because I have blood pressure, that's why you're dizzy, because I'm not. The only thing I have now is headaches and dizziness. Nobody here can tell me how long I'm gonna have dizziness and I'm gonna have headaches. If you go to the doctor, they're gonna tell you, take these pills for dizziness and take this for dizziness. That's not what I'm about. I don't like to take medication if I don't need to. I keep myself active. I walk on the treadmill every day. So I don't want to be on medication, but nobody can tell me if I don't think I'm gonna be 10 years from now, because I don't think if I'm gonna live maybe 10 more years or 15 more years. There's a long-term effect, but what can I do now to ease my concerns about my health? I'm talking about a year from now, 2 years from now, I'm gonna continue to have headaches, nobody can tell me. Am I gonna continue to have dizziness? Nobody can tell me. So what am I supposed to do? That's my question. Do anybody want to answer? No, because they don't have answers, right? Nobody have answer. In the meantime, I have to be very careful when I move, if I take a shower. What can I do? I live by myself, so what am I going to do? For how long?
Have you gone to have you taken advantage of the Ultimate examination? Okay, that's.
But it's the same thing.
Right. I don't want to try to give you medical advice, but I'm not a doctor,
Yeah, I know
but
that.
Ultimate would provide the medical service.
And
at
the
least.
last thing I want to say, because I don't want to have an answer, and I really didn't expect one after I hear all this, but it's concerning. It's concerning. Another thing I want to say, Mr. Michael Flad, 2 issues that I have emailed you. You have been on top of it. First incident was a pothole on my corner of my house that was taken care of. The second email that was about the post office cleanliness, the post office of Firestone Boulevard. I'm the one that did that. And you did take care of it right away. So for that, I want to thank the city of Southgate. They hired such a good man.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
I've had a really long week, so I appreciate you saying that. So
Okay.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Hello, yeah, my name is Mario Dominguez Jr. I'm a resident of Southgate. I've heard of death from above, but this is a new one. I mean, this is California. We're supposed to be the greenest state, I think, in the whole union. And for this to be happening in 2020 is pretty disgraceful. With the state and the state regulators, are any of them involved? Is the governor doing anything? Is he even aware of the situation and what's happening today? With our city attorney, the question that I'd like to ask him, is there any way that the city attorney, not just for Southgate, but the surrounding cities of Bell Gardens, Cudahy, Huntington Park, Downey, can't they all join together in a class action lawsuit against Delta Airlines and just hit them hard with one big lawsuit? And the pilot or pilots that were flying this plane for Delta when it occurred, have any of them been terminated or reprimanded because of this incident? I think it's pretty disgraceful that they're still allowed to be able to fly and not have some sort of a punishment levied against them. And is there anything else? That's all that comes to mind. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me have the city attorney come up. We'll have one more speaker.
Yeah, so on the issue of lawsuits and what communities can do, it's something that's worth looking into. I would tell you, it is exceptionally rare for a jet fuel to fall over any community. I've done research over the last couple of days looking for something that would be similar to this, where a plane had dumped any kind of fuel over any kind of inland scenario, much like happened here. I've not been able to find it. It's exceptionally rare. And we're down to letters that were written to the FAA by individuals. There's no case law that's out there that I've been able to track on this issue. At some point in time, and I can't tell you what the current policy is, but these things are so rare that the FAA doesn't even have regulations, or did not have regulations prohibiting this, right? It's sort of like, do you need to have a regulation with the FAA that thou shalt not run into a building, right? These things aren't intentionally done. And so the FAA, I think, is been caught a little flat-footed. There are protocols that relate to the discharge of fuel. There is those things are done, but in terms of the when and where a pilot can actually dump fuel over a community like this, I don't believe I haven't been able to find any protocols there. So, it's something that's evolving. We're looking into this, and whether we can make a joint effort in some sort of, request of Delta, that's yet to be determined. It's under review. So, good question. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Yo voy a hablar en español. Yo voy a hablar en español. Mi nombre es Lourdes. Yo vivo en San Miguel, aquí en Southgate, y estoy cerca de San Gabriel, donde paso.
My name is Lourdes, and I live on San Miguel, and I live close to San Gabriel Elementary.
Mi pregunta es, ¿por qué no nos han mandado, aunque sea un flyer? Porque todos nosotros residentes de aquí en Southgate tenemos árboles frutales, para decirnos que tenemos que quitarlo o algo que nos hayan mandado.
My question is, why hasn't the correct departments, LA County Health, or whose responsibility it is, mailed us a flyer to let us know what to do with our fruit trees?
Sí, esa es mi pregunta.
Okay. So, is there anyone still here from Public Health?
Yeah.
Gracias.
Here's the question specifically related to notification.
So notification, it's very hard for us to mail stuff individually to people. There are a couple things in terms of figuring out, one, the addresses or the areas that are covered. Typically, the way we get information out is going through press releases, putting it up on our websites, frequently asked questions, and through social media as well. And we can also, and I think we can do a better job of this, is working with cities impacted to get them the information so that they can replicate it and put it up on their websites and get it out as well. So we will work on that, and duly noted, but that's typically how we get information out.
Thank you for all of the comments and all of the questions. Because this is a special meeting, we need to formally close our public comment period. And with that, we're going to have some closing statements, but just can't thank you enough for being here, for taking the time. And I know the mayor's going to talk about this, but we are here for you. We are not going away. We're going to fight this fight with you, and we're going to keep you informed. We are not going anywhere. We are right here with you every step of the way. So, sorry.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for staying here. I know we went over a full hour, and a lot of folks have left. During my comments, I didn't mention some of the things that I learned and I stated during the calls with the FAA and Delta. So we learned during the call with the FAA that they don't have a proper protocol for the LAX airport to notify cities when and if this were to ever happen. So this is a big ask that we made of our Congress representatives to make sure that a protocol is established. One of my comments specifically was it absolutely necessary? And I do think that this was a negligent act by the pilot. We do know that the pilot was grounded, that he's not allowed to fly at this time per Delta officials. My comment specifically was, if the plane that has a capacity of 288 passengers only had 160 passengers. Was it absolutely necessary to release and dump the fuel in our communities? No excuses. That only is supposed to happen when the plane is at its full capacity and it's over a certain weight limit. So, I'm looking for that answer specifically myself. I have children that go to the local schools. My father was dropping off my son here at the park right at noon. He did experience some itchiness. He did try out Ultimate, even though he has health insurance. He wanted to go through the process. He wanted to see what was available to him. With regards to reimbursement, the reality is that, yeah, we have to submit a claim, right? Because he was even told, well, here's a prescription for a skin cream. You have to go purchase it, but then submit a claim to Delta. So, it kind of leaves folks, if there are Delta officials at Altamed outside, I would urge that they have phones out there to make sure that folks walking out of your facility call at that moment as well, please. If Altamed can facilitate that, I would greatly appreciate that. During the call with Delta, just Thursday evening, when they refused to come, they notified us that they have a total of 220 claims. That's inclusive of all the communities that have called. So of course, they're not going to get into the details of names and addresses for confidentiality reasons, but I am curious to know, are they asking folks to sign some type of disclaimer? We should definitely know that. I think the city should definitely hold them accountable. With regards to the unbearable odors, you're right. I have concerns. My own mother is going through cancer herself, and she did state that even within the household, she felt the odors going in through her nose, and she felt a burning sensation. So of course, that adds more concern to me. And she's resilient like all of us. She said, well, it's okay. I already had cancer. Let's just see what happens. But the reality is that we do need to have folks at the LA County Department of Public Health follow up. We are ready to partner with you. We want you to have the support you need. If it's the CDC, if it's our supervisor, Solis, who needs to make that call to make sure you come and study our community, our soil, do a long-term study, come back and revisit us 2 years from now, come back 4 years from now. We need to do this. We're not exaggerating, right? A lot of people have said, oh, we're exaggerating, it's not a big deal. We are not. My message is, if you have any minimal doubt that you have anything or concern, go and document it. So again, thank you, community, for being here. Do not leave. I want to make sure that our council members have anything to state. At this point, they don't do it. Okay, we're wrapping it up. I know earlier there was a desire, so thank you again. We are not, we'll have to have a follow-up. There has to be follow-up. We're going to rely on the social media pages that exist. We're going to rely on the deltafuelrelease.org page that the city created, and I would expect to hear follow-ups during our regular council meetings as well, so that they're agendized and documented on a regular basis. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.